Welcome back, everybody. I know it's been quite a while since our last meeting. I know we're all busy. We don't officially have a lunch schedule anymore with our new clinic schedule, and it's hard to find a time where everybody can meet, but we have a pretty good turnout, and I think that's in large part due to our special guest, Dr. Ferran. For those of you that don't know him, he graduated from UMKC, and he talked about how Dr. Casabon was his radiology professor. Afterwards, he went on to get his master's degree in business administration from ASU. Represent. We have a few ASU members here. I think we have me.
ASU.
Yep. We have Gitika here too. Ellie. Yeah. So we have a couple of ASU members here. Let's see. He has also achieved his mastership in the Academy of General Dentistry. He is practicing currently at Today's Dental in the Phoenix metro area, where I'm from. And then during his free time, I don't know if he even has any free time, but he also offers CE courses, lectures internationally, and then he writes books such as his hit, Uncomplicated Business. Most of our members may know him as the founder of Dental Town. It's an online community for dentists and dental professionals. It was started in 1999, and I believe the last count was 250,000 members. I don't know how long ago that was, but I think it's just growing, so it's still growing. And then also how I became a fan was through the Dentistry Uncensored podcast. And if our members haven't tuned into that yet, please do. It's really interesting. My car rides are just occupied by that podcast, so it's really great. I'm going to drop the links on the chat for everybody to find Dental Town and find the Dentistry Uncensored podcast. So I pass the virtual mic on to you, Dr. Ferran.
Well, call me Howard, and today's a really special day. Today's August 4th, and today is my 30-year anniversary
of
my first lecture in August 4, 1990, and my comptroller, Stacy, made me a pillow, and I just can't believe 30 years ago today, I gave my first lecture in New York City, and I only gave it because I grew up in Wichita, Kansas, and I went to see New York City, so me and my school buddy from dental school, Craig Steichen, who was also Denise's student, Dr. Denise Kate Kassenbaum, who best teacher at UMKC, love that woman to death. She was so smart. She knew everything about radiology. I mean, she was always the smartest person in the room. But we wanted to go see New York City. So I decided, well, I'll go lecture. And it's a very important point I want you guys to understand. A great question is, well, why did I go give a lecture? I mean, I graduated in 87. I gave my first lecture in 90. What's all that about? Well, my dad had, he was had 9 Sonic drive-in franchises, and from age 10 to 20, I really felt like I knew the business of franchises for fast food. And I love my dad to death. He was the greatest guy in the world. But my next door neighbor was Kenny Anderson, the dentist, and I go to work with my dad and make cheeseburgers, and I go to work with Kenny, and he'd take x-rays. And by the way, there was no computers back then. There was no smartphones. The hottest technology I ever saw was Kenny taking an x-ray through a tooth and developing it in a dark room where you dipped it in difference. And I was love at first sight in the 6th grade. I never deviated 1%. But the reason I went and lectured is because I knew that I knew a lot about business, and I could tell all the other people. But it put my name in the ring, and I'd meet people like you, and they would, you'd form relationships. And life is not what you know, it's what you know and who you know, and it's networking. And it's a crazy thing in dentistry because the people that get into dental school, they got A's in calculus and physics and biochemistry, and they basically all sat in the library for 8 years. Dentists are more like scientists than they are politicians or all this stuff like that. And you always go into a medical dental building, and there'll be like 8 dentists in there. And I'll say, okay, who was the last guy you ever invited over to your house for dinner? Oh, I've never invited one for dinner. They've never even gone to lunch. And you see all this weird behavior, like young kids will get out of school and they'll say, well, I want to learn implants. So they'll get on an airplane, fly clear across the country, and go into a hotel and pay a stranger $1,000. It's like, dude, you had to fly over your periodontist's house. How could you be in Phoenix or Denver or, your town, and why would you have to leave your town, let alone the state, let alone the country? People are going to Dominican Republic to learn implants, and their periodontist is like, well, he must not like me, or maybe I smell, or maybe I have a problem. It's all in networking. Same thing about getting sued. When you've had half the dentist in your 5-mile radius over your house for dinner and a patient comes in and whatever, you guys work the problem of the case. And sometimes people came in to me and said, oh my God, I'm going to sue him because he did this. I'll say, I'll tell you what, just settle down. How about I'll redo it for free if you don't go crazy there. He's a good guy. He tried hard. It didn't work, and it goes back and forth. So, get out there and press the flesh. Run for mayor. If you're thinking about going to Phoenix, a handful of companies, Benco, Burkhart, Patterson, Shine, they sell all the supplies for the whole state. And then they know which areas of town is all their over 30, over 60, over 90 account receivables, and it's a really bad area to go. Then they know the area where everybody's calling up because they need another operatory. They're expanding. They want another room. And you see people that will, go through 10 years of their life in a town and they didn't meet any other dentists. They didn't network. So I know it's counterintuitive. A shy person likes to just be alone in the library reading a book, and I love that more than anything. I mean, I love to crawl up in a hole and read a great book. But sometimes you got to get out there and run for mayor. And if you're not going to get out there and press for list, another thing I did when I opened up my office, I knew people were going to the pharmacy and saying, I got a toothache, should I take Anbesol or whatever? I had every pharmacist and their spouse over my house for dinner in the first year. All the pharmacists took me up on it, all the chiropractors, all the naturopaths. The MDs were pretty busy and pretty intensely busy, and probably only got maybe 10-20% of them over to my house, but it's always been about networking. You know what I mean? So I'm only went on that rant because today's my 30-year anniversary of lecturing, and the only thing I had to tell them was what I learned from my dad, which I could go into if you want me to, or I'm here for you, so I'll answer questions, whatever you want to do.
Of course, any of our members have any questions in particular? You can feel free to unmute yourself and ask.
Gitka, I know you have a question.
You're
from ASU. I bet she's got 3 questions. She's going to ask you what's better, the Whataburger.
Too.
Oh, nice.
Where are you in Arizona?
I'm in Scottsdale. I'm back at home.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah.
So you probably want to know what's better, Whataburger or the...
It's always going to be In-N-Out. I'm not a Whataburger fan.
My son Ryan loves the In-N-Out burger, but I still love Sonic. I mean, I spent 10 years in a Sonic drive-in, and there's nothing better than Sonic drive-in for this boy.
Well, that's what you grew up on, so I totally understand.
It's my comfort food. And we thought we were so lucky back then. I mean, I was the most popular guy in my class because after school, if you went home with Howie, you'd stop by his dad's restaurant and eat all the Sonic drive-in French fries. We thought we were so lucky. Little did we know it was like smoking cigarettes going in there eating. But how things change.
That's so funny. So I actually have not heard your podcast, but I heard a lot about you on another podcast that I listened to. He's from Arizona. I'm trying to remember. It's called the Shared Practices Podcast.
Yes.
Yeah. And so I heard a lot about you, and I was going to start, once I was done finishing that podcast, I really wanted to start listening to yours. And I had no idea that you were based out of Phoenix. Out of Arizona. Like ideally, once I graduate, I do want to come back to the Valley. And so I think for me, my biggest question is it worth coming back to the Valley or just any place? Denver's very saturated. Phoenix also is extremely saturated. And I'm not sure if that's the wisest decision right after graduation, or if I should go to a place like maybe Tucson that is not as saturated yet.
Well, demographics do matter, and I can prove it to you. You could graduate from dental school and go set up your dental office in Zimbabwe, and then we'll talk in a year. I mean, demographics matter. You don't want to go to the Congo if you could go to Scottsdale, right?
Right.
But within the United States, there's a company called Pew. And they start off with it's a nonprofit thing where they're trying to save the oceans, and the oceans cover about 70% of the planet. But the next biggest, most weighted concern they have is healthcare, and so they do a lot of stuff in dentistry. And one of the things they do is demographics. And I've seen it here a lot. Like you probably want to live in Scottsdale. I can just tell by the
Correct.
hair and all the bling that you're a Scottsdale. You don't look like an Apache Junction. You don't look like an AJ girl.
No.
Who's headed for the trailer park. But the thing is, you can live in Scottsdale And then you can commute 30 minutes to work. But what I see is people will wake up in the suburbs in Phoenix where there's a dentist for every 2,000. They will get
Right.
in their car and they'll commute for an hour. And when they get out of their car, there's a dentist for every 500 people. And then, it's like, my God, if you would have gone the other way, like when I opened up in Phoenix, I opened up on the very edge of town. I mean, 1987, it was only one more mile and then it went to dirt road. And now,
Where was your practice?
Awatuki, 48th
Oh
and
my
Elliott.
gosh.
Yeah.
That's still kind of the edge of town though, but not as much anymore.
Yeah, 32 years ago, it was just Elliott, then Warner, then Dirt Road. But now
Right.
it goes Elliott, Warner, Ray, Chandler, Pecos. So we've added, a couple 3 miles or whatever. But, kids would come out of school and I'd say demographics matter. Go to Florence. They don't have a dentist. Go to Eloy. They still don't have a dentist. And no, I want to go to Scottsdale. And Scottsdale, in rich areas, an acre of land might only have one house with 2 people in it. Where you go to a poor part of town, an acre of land might have an apartment complex that has 500 people in it. So demographics completely matter, and you just need to do your demographics. I mean, Eloy still doesn't have a dentist, but when I came out of school, the hungry ones, the networkers, the ones that came and knocked on your door, and by the way, 32 years of watching this, just the litmus test of the dentists who came by when they're in school, knocked on the door and asked me what I thought of this and that. Just the fact that they physically prove they're searching, they're networking, they're running for mayor. And I've watched those kids for 32 years. They all crush it. I don't know one guy that came by, knocking on the door, hungry for information, that didn't find it and make it. And I would tell those young kids, I said, Maricopa, there's hardly anyone down there. Eloy still doesn't have a dentist. And Maricopa's like, what is Maricopa, 30-minute drive south? And the first 10 guys that went down there, I mean, they were getting 120 new patients a month. They just crushed it. And so, there's cities, 12% of the cities in the Midwest don't even have a single dentist. And that's all on the Pew Research. I mean, I couldn't believe how big some of the towns were in Arizona that still don't have a dentist. They don't have one. And then you might be thinking, well, I want to live in Scottsdale and work in Scottsdale. Well, I want to rob a bank, but there's consequences to robbing a bank. And, I would rather go to good demographics. And you're of the age where right around the corner is driverless cars. So how you're sitting there now on your laptop doing your thing, we're probably just a couple of years away where a car is going to be a box. You're going to go in your box. You may take a nap. You may sit at your desk. You may watch a movie. And 30 minutes later, the alarm goes, ding, you've arrived. And that might be an hour. So I don't think the commute is going to be an issue with driverless cars. But I do think demographics matter. Number 2. When you go to California, everybody says San Fran is overpopulated, doesn't need a dentist. And they all have one thing in common. They were all born in America, which is the biggest weight against your predicting your success. Because when you're born in America, you're like, well, I graduated from dental school, so I deserve a new car and a house and a lot of bling and fancy vacations. But when you're born in Africa, when you're born in India, when you're born in Vietnam, they tell me in San Fran, well, all the Americans, meaning people born in America, they all work Monday through Thursday, 8 to 5. But when you're in San Fran, by 6 o'clock, there's no Americans open. It's only us Vietnamese. And they'll get a phone call. It's a toothache. They come down. They'll do a root canal, build up in crowns, scan it with a Cerac, mill it out, mold it. And it'll be $2,500 on their debit card. I mean, she made $2,500, and I can't tell you how many times I've seen this where, especially if they migrate here from Asia, Africa, South America, a lot of times they'll come out of dental school, start their own dental office, and I'll say, do you have a car? No. Do you have a house? No. Apartment? No. Where do you live? I live in the office. I mean, my office, I bought this office. It was 1,500 square feet, and my mom lives with me. And I mean, it's like 3 people living in the back room of the dental office. And you meet those people, if they're not born in the United States, you meet them. And 5 years out of dental school, they have no student loans, they have no debt on their practice, and they have $300,000 or $400,000 in cash. If they're born in America, as soon as their car's paid off after 5 years, they go buy another one for 5 years. I mean, I'll be 58 this month. August 29th, I turn 58. I have friends my age that just upgraded to even a bigger house, and it's on a 30-year mortgage. It's like, dude, you're 58, on a 30, you're going to work until you're 88. So being born in America and a dentist means that you always are paying other people interest for the use of their money now. And if you're not born in America and you're a dentist, you know the power of once you put $1 in the bank, that bank will give you a nickel a year until the end of time. I mean, Rockefeller died, and the billions he had in the bank, those nickels add up. They're still running and funding the Rockefeller Center and the research and all that stuff. But, Rockefeller got on the other side of let your money make every dollar makes you a nickel a year. But born in America dentists, they usually don't figure that out until their 50s. So, like when you buy a big house, did you ever sit down and realize how many thousands of days you're going to have to give of your life just to buy that house? And they bought it today, and then they finance it. Easy math. If it's a $100,000 house, the payment's $1,000. You'll pay $1,000 a month for 30 years. You'll buy that house 3 times. And dentists will move about every 7 years. So they just never, ever get on the other side of debt, where I'm giving you a nickel a dollar for the use of your money versus, hey, why don't you give me a nickel and I'll save. So what I just tell kids who are born in America is, I know you're entitled to eating out, 19 out of 30 meals a week. I know you're entitled to a new car every 5 years. I know you're entitled to all these things, but you already made the decision to borrow $400,000 of other people's money. And a lot of people in dental school, they're so freaked out about that $400,000, and I laugh because you're not going to get divorced for under $1 million. So if you think your $400,000 student loans, cry me a river someday. And it's women dentists, and it's so funny because they never even saw it coming. They're like, they always thought when a woman divorces, she gets money. Oh my God, I'll give you so many names of women in Phoenix, Arizona that are paying some guy $8,000 a month for 8 years, and they just, the only reason their ex isn't dead is because it's illegal to shoot them. My divorce, my student loans was $87,000. My divorce was $3.8 million. I mean, take 3. It was here. I got to do it because the math. It's hilarious. If you take 3,800,000 divided by $87,000. My divorce was 43 times higher than my student loans cost. And when I got out of school, I thought, oh my God, I got this big student loan. I didn't know that my divorce would be 43 times more than that. So the first thing I have to beg you guys to do is marry smart. You're in a dental school where everyone in that class is going to make $10,000 a month. And the dentists in dental school that pick a mate while they're still there. I mean, can you imagine? Oh, yeah, my husband, he might be lazy. He might throw his towel on the ground. He might not pick up the trash. But he brings home $10,000 a month. And then what do the dentists do? The smartest dentist in the class. And they'll go marry the hottest looking waitress at the Waffle House. And she'll never have a job again. And she'll destroy $10,000 a month. You'll marry her at 25 to 65, and she spends $10,000 a month. And you could have married a classmate that is exactly the opposite, that earns $10,000 a month from age 25 to 65. So that's $5 million going this way, $5 million. It's a $10 million difference to marry someone in your class as opposed to the hottest looking guy on a Harley Davidson coming out of LA Fitness with his big biceps. That's really fun and exciting for about an hour, and then you're stuck with some guy on a Harley Davidson with big biceps who doesn't have a job as an unemployed. So if you just marry right, your student loans are a joke. They don't even matter. And then when you come out of school, here's what you're going to do. You're going to sell me a story. You're going to say, well, I just want to get a job, and I just want to get some experience, and I'm going to go work for a big DSO. Okay, well, if that's so great, it's 2020. You should be able to go back 5 years, go back to 2015, ask Denise for a list of all the students that graduated in 2015, and then go say, okay, 100 people graduated. How many of them got a job at a DSO, worked 5 years, and lived happily ever after? Okay, I'm still looking for that person. What I always find is I'll meet you 5 years after graduation, and you've had 5 jobs. You hate them all. And why do you hate them all? Because you're a doctor. Doctors, dentists, lawyers, they're like herding cats. If you want a bunch of employees to salute you, join the Army, join Walmart. But when you have a law firm, look at the politics in dental school. Every dentist I know that works in dental school say, I love working with the students and I hate the politics. The politics in dental schools and hospitals and law firms, they're just grotesque. And nobody wants that. So what you end up doing is you go hop 5 different jobs because you thought it was a great idea, and then you finally do what I did straight out of school. I graduated May 11. I had my office open September 21st. I got in with no money down because I had 5 sisters, and my dad thought that you pay for college for girls but not boys because boys got to be a self-made man. And he told me that if he paid for my college, I'd go to Creighton and do drugs and chase women. So I had to buy my drugs on student loan money. That was so embarrassing to buy a bag of weed with student loan money, but I did pay it back. My student loans are paid back. But the bottom line is, my gosh, I came out of dental school. My dad wouldn't give me a dime. I found the best demographics, and how did I find the best demographics? I wrote the Department of Economic Security, and back then we had no computers, so I had to get a 6-foot by 4-foot map. I had to trace out the 303 census tracts for Phoenix, Arizona. Had to get a stack of recipe cards, with a number 2 pencil, and go over the 70, 80, and 85 mini census. I called the Arizona State Board, got a list of the dentists, and I had to figure out how many dentists were in each zip code. The best one was one dentist for every 6,000, and at 6200 South McClintock. In fact, I just did a podcast from 6200 South McClintock with my buddy Justin Moody, and of dental podcast, Worms, something like that, and love that guy. And oh my God, I remember seeing that building in 1987. I couldn't believe they built a big medical dental building, and there's like 20 dentists in there. Have you ever seen 20 In-N-Out burgers all stacked up on top of each other? Have you ever said, oh, let's go to the In-N-Out high rise? They have like a 20-story building of In-N-Outs. I mean, it doesn't happen. And when you say there's 38,000 McDonald's, I mean, that doesn't even make sense. McDonald's will tell you they have a McDonald's for every 25,000 people. And when I got to Ahwatukee in 87, there were 25,000 people. They had one McDonald's. And then when it got to 50,000, they put another McDonald's on Ray and our Warner and 48th. And then when they got another 25,000, they put one on Chandler. They spread out evenly. Dentists don't spread out evenly. They all go on top of each other, which leaves big voids. For instance, on DSOs, the reason I think Aspen, Bob Fontana is doing the best with Aspen is because his motto is, we go where they ain't. And you know where dentists don't go? They don't go where there's Medicaid. And he goes to the poor part of town, and he puts in a denture in-office facility where they get removable and all that. But the deal with dentists that's weird is dentists all like to treat rich people. You got 90% of the dentists chasing the upper top 5%, and I would rather own McDonald's than Ruth's Chris Steakhouse. And they're easier people to treat. They're more go-lucky. They're more fun. I would have never gone to Scottsdale just because I'm not that type. I mean, I'm a hick from Wichita, Kansas, and I just knew I wouldn't fit in Scottsdale. And now 32 years later, I know I really wouldn't have fit in Scottsdale. But when I found that area, the demographics, I called up the guy. And the lease guy said that he wanted $15 a square foot for 3 years. So I said, well, I want to talk to the owner because that's where shit happens like that. I'm not gonna play with the rep. And the owner came by, and I said he wants $15 a square foot for 3 years for 1,000 foot. I'll pay you $20 a foot for 5 years. And he said, all right, what am I doing with all that extra money? And I said, well, you built this whole 16-acre Safeway, Walgreens, Chase Bank, Pizza Hut. I said, I'm sure you could build my 1,000 square foot cheaper than I could. And he goes, yeah. He says, you're a young kid like you. He says, I could probably get it done for half to third the price with my subs. And so he built it all out, and I just had higher rent. Then I went over to Healthco, which eventually got swallowed up by Patterson, and I picked out everything I wanted. And then they told me it was about the same money as my student loans. It was about $86,000 or something like that. And I said, okay, well, the good news is I don't have a dime. So you give me all of that, and then I'll make payments for 60 payments over 5 years. And when I make my last payment, I own. So the landlord built it out. Healthco equipped the whole thing. And I opened up September 21st, 1987 with no money down. And then from there on out, it was the hustle. So I was seeing patients. And then if I had a cancellation, say I had nothing to do the afternoon, I'd print out a bunch of flyers, and I'd go across the street to the apartment complex, and I'd go to each door, knock on the door, somebody come to the apartment door and say, hey, I'm Howard, I'm that dentist right over there by Safeway. I'm gonna be here for 40 years. I just thought I'd get out and meet the neighborhood. And about 2 out of 3 people think it was really weird and like, oh my God, a dentist at the door. They'd be doing everything to like close the door and get away and run. And then the third guy'd be in his wife beater shirt and be out there like, "Oh, your teeth here," you know, and I'd put down my bag and pull out my dental gloves and mirror and flashlight and look in there. So it was from there on out, it was just hustling. But you know, I went from graduation to open up my practice September, and by the end of the year, I had an established practice that was collecting as much per month than the average practice in America. In fact, the next year, '88, I think we collected $1,250,000 back when the average dental office was half that. So you know, if you're willing to do demographics, if you're willing to take risk, if you're willing to get out there and hustle, then I think you'll do it. Another thing about getting in a dental office, no money down, is when I was little, when the old man sold you the practice, he carried the loan. He said, "Okay, I'll sell this thing to you for $500,000 at 10% interest for 7 years," and he would carry. Well, when he carried, he had massive skin in the game. So he might be analyzing you up and saying, "You're not going to work because, you know, mostly I do extractions and molar endo, and you don't like those. You like doing bleaching, bonding, veneers, or you know, or whatever, or this my team doesn't like you, so I know if I sell to you, they're all going to quit. Then the patients are going to quit." When the owner doctor has skin in the game, he's worried about his patients like you would be worried giving a baby up for adoption. I mean, you wouldn't sell it to the highest bidder. You'd want to know who the hell is adopting your baby. And so you still have a lot of that now, and a lot of it's in the rural, because young millennials that are single know it's hard to find a mate in Eloy with 800 people. You'd rather be in 3.8 million Metro Phoenix to increase your chance and your social life and all that stuff like that. But in rural practices all over America, there are so many doctors selling the practice, and they'll carry. And you can go there and buy $1 million practice without a signature, and the guys will carry. So there's so many solutions, and it's just about what I love about podcasts is if you get enough good information in your head, and you happen to be a doctor in the richest country in the world, the United States of America, I mean, it's like shooting fish in a barrel. I mean, it's your game to mess up. Now, if your expectations are, well, I'm only going back to Scottsdale, and I'm only working on really rich people, and I'm only doing full mouth reconstruction. Well, yeah, then it starts getting really, really weird and difficult, and you know, you really got to know what you're doing. But starting out, I mean, in America, to find Iowa has a list of 10 cities that don't have a dentist. You go there, Delta of Iowa kicks in 100,000 cash. The state of government of Iowa kicks in another 100,000, and then you go there, you have no competition. And you know who listens to me the most out of all the whole podcast? I know you're never supposed to talk about religion, sex, politics, or violence, so let's just start with religion. It's the Mormons. Because they're already married, they already have a kid, they already have a whole family in a box and will travel. And when you say, well, you're going out in the middle of Iowa and there's nobody there, and they're like, well, I've got everybody right here. And they go there and they hustle and they work hard. I know a dentist that went to Iowa. Not only was he the only dentist in the city, he was the only dentist in the county. I mean, it was just unbelievable. I think he did $1.2 million his first year and took home $400,000, which was his entire student loan debt. So everybody has an excuse. Everybody has 5 reasons of why they can't lose 10 pounds, join a gym, eat better. You know, we all have excuses. But the bottom line is, if you're hungry, and that's why I like the students that are in a lot of debt, because they're hungry. If dad paid for all your dental school, you'd probably get out and say, well, you know, we're in a pandemic. I think I'm just going to sit this first year out. Well, hell yeah, you can set the first year out. You have no debt. You can move back in with your parents. That's good. But, man, when you're already crossed the line and got married, already have one kid on the ground and another one in the oven, and borrowed $400,000, and your mom and dad can't bail you out, Mormon, LDS, oh, my God. They'll go to the right place, work their butt off, hustle, and they always end up rich. Isn't that amazing how they do that? They always are behind the odds, and they always end up rich. You're not going to meet, I mean, I can't even count on one hand the 60-year-old Mormon dentist I've met that didn't have a mill. I mean, you know, so the opportunity is yours. At this point, I don't even know what the question was, so I'll just see if there's another question.
Okay, so we have one question from the California kid in our class, Chad. I think he's ready to get engaged, so he's asking about prenups. What are your what are your notions on prenups?
Well, I mean, I can't say enough of the need for a prenup. I mean, well, first of all, I would say that, you know, the fact that the government's involved with marriage is just, I mean, it's a crime to begin with. I mean, and getting married without a prenup, I mean, okay, so we're friends. And then all of a sudden you say to me, hey, do you still want to be my friend? Well, if you stop being my friend, I get your car and half your house and half your bank account. It only makes sense when you drop a baby, because a baby is a 20-year commitment. I mean, my babies are 30, 28, 26, 24, and I still, you know, have to talk to them 2 or 3 times a day. You know, it's a lifelong process. So I'm all for a marriage if you're going to bring a kid in. But when you look at a quarter of the baby boomers didn't have any kids, and a third of the millennials aren't going to have any kids. My God, if you're marrying another woman and you both know that you're never having a kid, why do you bring a lawyer into this? I don't get it. And if you want to bring a lawyer into it, then I'm going to bring my lawyer into it. And then the best thing can happen, if you don't want to have kids and she doesn't want to do a lawyer and you don't want a prenuptial, well, do what you do with all your other friends. Just have fun and be a friend. But the legal contract, I mean, I think, seriously, I mean, I'm not even kidding. You know, the lawyers, there's 1 million attorneys, and they're the ones that have structurally messed up almost everything there is, from just intellectual property to everything. I mean, it's always lawyers negotiating between the business class and the government is just the mob. I mean, they can arrest you and kidnap you and put you in a cage. You know, when people talk about different forms of government, they always start with violence and they always end with violence, and the facade you call on the cover, you know, democracy or communism or authority, they're all the same. They hired people that will kidnap you and put you in a cage and or kill you. And historically, they've killed about 6% of their own people, whereas the people only kill about 1%. So if you go to a family reunion and there's 100 people there and you shoot one, that's about right. You know, that would be what we've learned from historical, but the government's like 6%. And you know, Google Mao Zedong, Google Stalin, Google Idi Amin. You might find out what I'm talking about. But you love a woman, you want to marry her for life, but she wants you to go down to the courthouse and sign documents, and you need a witness, and you don't have a lawyer. You know, I mean, it's a very expensive game. And a lot of people say, I don't want to do that. It's not romantic. Okay, that might not be romantic going in, but that alimony is going to be very, very real going out. And another big advantage is this. When you marry another dentist in your class, you're both doctors. You both have an office. You both have assets. You don't need. It's when you're supporting someone that doesn't have a job, you know, and you agree to this, that, you know, you marry me, you don't have to work. Well, it's a crazy thing. I would say date, be friends, do everything right, and then if you decide to bring a kid in the world, yeah, you got to get some lawyers and sit down and do this thing right. And it's also a problem when you go lease. Like, I know a dentist who signed a 5-year lease, and then it was 1,000 square foot in this big 12 or 18,000 square foot center. It didn't have a major anchor like a grocery store or anything, but one of the big air conditioners on the top broke and flooded out everything. Well, the yoga studio, it turns out that he had a triple net lease. So if nobody pays and you're the only guy left, you'll pay for the whole thing. Well, the yoga studio said, well, we're just going to roll up our mat and leave. And the next door was, you know, everybody left. But here's a dentist who had, you know, a $100,000 build out in there, and he had to basically fix the whole 8 or 10,000 square foot roof. And I said to him, well, you know, you could probably sue your attorney who signed off on this lease. I mean, this lease is it's insane. And he goes, well, I didn't have an attorney. Oh, I'm sorry. I thought you were a dentist. I did not know that you went to law school. Did you go to ASU Law School? No, I went to AT Still Dental School. Where in dental school did they teach you real estate law? Stay in your lane. I mean, when you go out of your lane, there's 1 million attorneys, and a dentist has a big dollar sign on his forehead, his back, his butt, his car. Everybody's going to try to shake you down. And the fact that you signed a 5-year legal agreement that was 10 pages long. Have you ever seen people buy the clothes on their house? Have you ever witnessed that when people bought a house and closed? Oh, I mean, it's just, okay, sign here. 20-page sign here, 20-page sign. Nobody read a thing, and they're basically, took 30 minutes to find all the 25 places to do a signature, and it didn't even dawn on them. Are you sure a lawyer shouldn't have read this or checked into it? Or, oh no, we're good. You're always all good until you're not good. That's why socialized medicine is so successful, because in America, only 1% of Americans will spend the night in a hospital this year. Have you been in the hospital this year?
Nope.
Anybody on the team? Anybody up there? Yeah, I haven't either. I mean, when 99% of the people are never in a hospital and it's free, everybody thinks it's great. But if you're the 1% that's in the hospital, now you have a totally different view, because now you're in the hospital. So the bottom line is, stay in your lane, and you could. If your wife says, if the girl says, let's go get married, say, well, hey man, let's fly to Kathmandu, Nepal, and we'll climb up to the base camp, and we'll say vows to each other in the base camp. They're like, no, we need to do it inside the United States of America. We need to sign this paper. We need another witness to sign. It's a legal deal. It's not romantic marriage. If you want to get romantic marriage, shit, I'll fly you to Kathmandu tomorrow. We'll just get drunk, have fun. But that's not what they're doing. They're taking you to a courthouse, and you're signing documents, and that's your money. So be smart now, or forever hold your peace.
Okay, let's see. Chad had another question, and it kind of ties into my question, so I'll ask both of them at once. And it comes from an experience. So there's a popular Facebook page with a lot of dentists. I'm not going to name it, but there was recently a post about somebody that came as an associate applying for a job. And the dentist said that this kid came to him, he had 7 crowns total, no removable experience, nothing else. And then the comments just started flooding of dentists saying, wow, this is insane. Tell him to go back to school, pay another $500,000 and double his crowns. We're not hiring him. He can do my prophies because my hands are cramping. And, that plays into the fear that a lot of us fourth years have right now. We don't know what we're going to graduate with, especially if there's a second wave. Right now, our clinic is moving super slow. So we're worried about
what year are you guys all in?
So we have a couple third years and then a couple fourth years here. So it's like half.
Okay. Well, first of all, they're pretty sure on the virologist from ASU and the one that I post on Dental Town from where is he, Michigan or something like that. The waves were with HIV pandemics, and now we're so far into this. It's our first big coronavirus pandemic, and there's no sign of any types of wave formation. So that's already that terminology is dead now. There's no wave, and it's just burning through available people, just jumping from people to people. I think that no matter what happens, I think the worst will be over by Christmas. And I think we're going up the Corona Mountain, and probably we'll get there to the top of the year. I expect, January 1st to be the worst of the mayhem, and then it'll probably go back down. But it's going to be gone in 2 years. I mean, the majority of it. Number 2, a lot of we have 2 Americas, so. Half of America, people don't like people not wanting to wear a mask and all this stuff, but they want free speech. Well, the problem with free speech is you got to listen to it. And in authoritarian China, they won't listen to it. In authoritarian Korea, they're not going to listen. But so America, the neatest thing about social media is you just get to absolutely hear for the first time what people are really thinking. And it's pretty, it just is what it is. And so half of America doesn't believe in any of this stuff. They think it's the flu, a cold, it only kills old people, whatever. And then the other half are concerned about it. Well, the half that doesn't concern, a 30-year-old, they have no money, they have 1 cavity, they need 1 filling. The older people that need 4 quadrant root plane curettage, an implant, a crown, a root canal, all that kind of stuff, they have the money and they're scared. And so what we're doing to accommodate them is the 30 and under crowd just comes in, and they think it's funny that you take their temperature and do all this stuff, and they like to talk through the whole appointment about how this is all just crazy. But the older people that are afraid to come in, then we say, okay, well, your treatment plan is $2,500, and if you pay for that right now, for your appointment, when you come in here, you'll be the only one. And so remember, there's a couple of Americas inside America. Like you wouldn't compare Miami to Anchorage, Alaska. I don't know what Miami and Anchorage, Alaska have in common. But so that's the same in America. There's about two Americas. About one half is just going to buy on Costco, the cheapest, and they're still going to the DSOs, and the DSOs are still real busy. If you go on Dental Town, so we've had free classified ads since we started this thing in 1998, and there's always been about 1,000 practices for sale and about 5,000 ads for an associate. Now, post-pandemic, you have 2,000 practices for sale, and you only have 1,000 ads for an associate, and they're all major DSOs. When I talk, and I've podcasted every major DSO kingpin on here, Rick Workman of Heartland, Bob Fontana Aspen, Stephen Thorne of all that stuff. So if you're wondering who's the heart and soul behind the company, you could watch all those. But they're busy. I mean, I talked to Rick the other day, and they're basically like in the high 90 percentile back. Another way to get great experience is go to the poor. Like, you can go to a Medicaid clinic. I mean, when I was building out my dental office, there was this dentist named Ed Silker who had 4 Sunshine Dentals, and they were made in a trailer. There was a 6-operatory trailer that he would park in these big shopping centers. And it was amazing because when I got out of school, when Denise, my teacher, keep reminding her that she must be older than me because she was my teacher, and I'm turning 58, so I'm thinking she might have hit the big 6-0. I think she's like a year older, but my gosh, I graduated, you can see I had done 55 fillings. Our requirements were 55 fillings, 15 canals of endo, 15 units of removable, so a full mouth denture B2, and then some other stuff. I was working at Sunshine. I was doing my requirements every week. And what was cool about it is there was a friend of mine in town who was a couple years older than me named Nick Gidwani. And the joke was how we would pull out the crown.
I know him.
You know him?
Yeah, he's a good family friend.
Oh, my God. So I would pull out the top half of the tooth, and then when I gave up, Nick would come and show me how to get the root out. And I would just used to say, can I just pull out the top, and then you'll come and pull out the bottom? And he'd say, no, Howie, you got to learn to get the whole thing out. But it was great because we were at Sunshine, and I knew that no matter what went wrong, Nick, or his wife Chitra, is it Chitra? Would come bail me out, and they would bail me out in 3 seconds, and I'd get a scene. I remember Nick's big lesson to me. He's like, well, I couldn't pull that tooth with that flap. A flap this long is going to heal the same amount of time a flap this long, and then he'd just spend an extra minute laying a flap so he could actually see what the hell I was doing. Then he popped the tooth out in 1 second. So as far as your requirements, yeah, it's great to have some volume, but that's not what kids want to do. They don't want to go to a Medicaid clinic. They don't want to go to a DSO, and they don't sign up and say, I want to work all the hours. But I mean, if you're married and got a kid in the oven and a kid walking, you'll do 7 to 7 days a week. So I would so as far as your experience, the DSOs will hire you. The other thing is this: the rural doctors, they have no liquidity. And the big DSOs all axed out their rural partners because of one thing, and that is they said single millennium kids out of dental school, their social life comes first, looking for a mate comes first, and going and living in a small town of 1,000 is a deal breaker. So they don't even go there because of the liquidity aspects. And we see that liquidity aspect where people put up a practice for sale. I know a guy that put his practice up for sale, walked away from a year, and then went back for a month, went away for 2 years, came back. I mean, it was a love-hate relationship because he couldn't liquidate it. Well, that's something where if you're really hungry and want a lot of experience, you can just go there and work. And I'll give you another example. A good friend of mine, Chip Castine, he wanted to live on the beach in L.A., in Hollywood, surfer Hollywood guy. But he knows there was like a dentist for every 500 people, none of them were making bank. But they were all making bank in Bakersfield. So what did he do? He went to Bakersfield and worked 4 10-hour days. And then Thursday, he was so rich, Thursday he'd either jump in his black Porsche and drive to LA where he had $1 million condo on the ocean, and eventually bought a plane because he didn't even want to drive. But, I mean, he makes more money in 4 10-hour days, and then he has a completely separate life on the beach in LA in this beautiful house, mansion, pad looking over the ocean. And that's what a lot of people I know do in the rural. They'll drive out Monday morning at 5 o'clock, and they'll drive 2 hours out of town of Phoenix, Arizona, to some town that's got about 1,500 people and no dentist. Now remember, the city in the rural, the draw area is the size of the population. So when you go to a small city of 1,000, it has another 1,000 that will drive up to an hour to go into that town. That's where the Walmart is. That's where everything is. So in those small towns, you should have a dentist for every 1,000, even though the country has a dentist for every 2,000, because you're not realizing the draw. So when you see a town of 5,000 with 5 dentists, that's about right for the median. But when you see a town of like 10,000, it's got 9 dentists, it's got 8 dentists, something is wrong. And by the way, who builds the biggest practices? Every time I meet a dentist who is a solo practitioner doing $2.5 to $4 million a year, they always went to the rural and did the same deal. And what was the same deal? They come into this town of 5,000, and then they see old man Barney's getting ready to retire. Well, does he want to put it up for sale and have some young, energetic whippersnapper like you that's going to do all these things? Heck no. He just buys the practice. And then the old man says, well, he's the best dentist in town. I'm going to sell to him. And then he rolls all the practice and staff into his, and then they close it down. So that town used to have, say, 6 dentists. And the old man but he sold it to one of the other 5. Now the town has 5. And then it happens again in 5 years. Now the town has 4. And then it happens again in 5 years. Now the town has 3. It's called mergers and acquisitions on Wall Street, and that's the only thing you see. And I see these kids, and it's like they say they have new opportunities. God, Dental Town's got 2,000 dental offices for sale, and every single one of them is rural. If they really thought in their heart that you're a good person, and my staff would like you, and my patients would like you, and yeah, you came out of school, you only done 7 fillings. Well, you'll do 7 fillings your first day, and all that kind of stuff. But you'll get someone, take you under their wing, sell you their practice. There's so many opportunities, but the opportunities are limited because you say, well, I only want to go to Scottsdale and only do Invisalign patients on Instagram influence stars. Okay, well, that's not what you told me when you applied to dental school. When you applied to dental school, you said you wanted to help people and get them out of pain, and you wanted to be their doctor. So there's so many opportunities, and the person that hustles is going to find out about it because they go network. They listen to podcasts, and it's the podcast. They hear other guests. If you're looking, you want to practice in Scottsdale or in Arizona?
You talking to Gitica or me?
Well, who's all from Arizona?
I am.
Both of us are from Arizona, and then I think
Ellie.
there's one more person. Ellie's from Arizona.
Yeah, so who's the branch manager in Arizona for Patterson, Shine, Benco, Burkhart? Who are the major labs where you go in there in the labs and you talk to the labs, and everybody knows the sauce. And then you're thinking about buying a practice. Here's the other gold mine of buying a practice. There's a lot of really old men, and by old I mean anybody who's a day older than me, like Nick Gidwani. That's old, man. That is is he still alive?
Yes.
Oh my God.
He wants me to buy his practice once I graduate.
Yeah, now see, they're now that's something that's serious. That's a serious opportunity. But what I would do is, when you or looking at it, let's say you want to buy Nick's practice. Well, did you ask the general manager of Benco, Burkhart, Patterson, Shine? Did you go to the big labs? Did you go to the vendors? You're trying to get a feel. Is this area of town growing or is it not growing? And then the real big value, here's where buying Nick's practice could hurt you or help you. Like, I know people that bought a practice and they said, well, it's a great practice, does $750,000 a year, it's all great. But what they didn't realize is $100,000 of that was molar endo, and you already decided you're not going to do molar endo. And another $100,000 maybe was pulling wisdom teeth, and you've already decided you're not going to do that. But you want to build a big bleaching, bonding, Invisalign practice, and that's unproven. So where it's really great is when you go in there and say, okay, I can do everything you're doing. You're doing basic cleanings, exams, x-rays, simple endo, simple extractions, but you're not doing Invisalign. So I could buy your practice, do everything you're doing, and then add Invisalign. The luckiest guy I ever met was 1 year after me. He came out of UP, and he went to Palm Springs. I opened up in 87. He was 88. He found this old man that was doing like $650,000 a year that didn't do crown and bridge. He just did big old amalgam patches. And he's been making these planting these beautiful trees for 40 years. He buys that practice, doesn't do a thing. 3 to 4 times a day, someone calls up because they bit down on something and a whole half of their tooth broke out. And they come down and he would just prep it for a crown, take it and press. He was doing 4 single unit crowns a day in this little 3 operatory thing. And then that old man not only did not do crown and bridge, he didn't do molar. He referred out all his endo. He referred out everything. I mean, it was just a cash cow. Buying that. And I've seen it the opposite, where some people have come from money and they bought way too big of a practice, like $1,250,000 practice, but this person could sell full mouth rehab. I mean, to sell a full mouth rehab, to convince someone to part with $25,000 to $50,000, I mean, that's a skill in itself. And it was a kid. He didn't know how to do the full mouth rehab, and he sure as hell could never have sold the case. And he bought that thing about 1.2 over in Glendale. And within 2 years, it was doing about $600,000 a year. And then it took him about 5 years to get that thing up to like $850 or $900. So if Nick, I know, I mean, I used to work there. I know can extract any single tooth there is on the planet. The guy is fearless. I don't know what he's doing. If you can do everything Nick does, and then he says the price is $1, but you could sit there and think, well, what does Nick not do? He started a side business. Did you know a side business where he's making toupees for bald men? And he made me this one. I don't know if you think how good his work is, but if you could do everything Nick does and bring something to the table, now that price comes down because you're buying a patient base. And then if you sit there and say, well, I don't want to live in that part of town, then you're looking at a commute. And I don't care what the commute is, buy a nice car or it's going to be a driverless car around the corner. I mean, you guys know that Phoenix was the testing site for Google's driverless cars. And I couldn't believe the press because one of them killed like one person in Tempe or whatever, and everybody freaks out. It's like, but they don't do journalism anymore. They didn't tell you, well, how many people were killed by a car with someone driving today? They always show you that one guy, the driverless cars. I mean, 30,000 Americans are killed by a car every year that someone's driving, and like 2 were killed by an automatic. I guarantee you this iPhone can drive better than anyone on this conference call because we're distracted. You got 4 people in the car, you're eating, someone's texting you, you're not paying attention, but the car is. So I think the commute is actually going to be the most productive time, because I know when you get to work, when you walk into work, you got all these people saying, how's the dog? How's the wife? How's the kid? You're interrupted, but you got to go in for meetings. And then when you go home, you got the kids, the family, the grandkids, you got all that kind of stuff. And I think a nice hour commute to work where you just buy a box car, you go in there, there's no windows, and 1 hour on your computer to knock out all your stuff. And then you go into work, get interrupted and all, and do your meetings and all that. But then you get in your car and you drive home, you got another solid hour by yourself. I think people are going to go out further and further, because for me, I would love to have 2 hours in the morning uninterrupted before anybody even wakes up, and then another 2 hours at the end of the day. So I think the commute thing is going to be a major game changer, and I don't see that being the variable. But my gosh, and then I would always say that I'll give you some stats. I mean, let me give you some stats. But working for other people, I just don't see it in the math. The average net income for dentists, specialists, on average $320, general dentist $197. So let's talk about that. In 1900, healthcare was 1% of the GDP. By 2000, it was 14%. By 2020, it was 17%. What does that mean in economics? It means as you get richer and richer, you bid up the price of a luxury item, right? So the Mayo brothers figured this out a long time ago. You go back 100 years, and when grandma got real old and she had cancer, they'd say every medicine bottle in the 1900s had 3 ingredients: morphine, cocaine, alcohol. Let's just make her comfortable, give her a teaspoon of this, and she'll be dead in no time. And the Mayo brothers like, do you guys realize that she's willing to sell her farm and her combine and her tractor, and she has $1 million in cash, and she would part with that $1 million to not die from this disease? And it was really hard for the Mayo brothers to say, hey, it's all right to dump a lot of money into an 85-year-old grandmother. And so in economics, the average person burn has 30,000 days. Well, after you've lived 15,000 days, what happened to the demand of the other 15,000 days? You keep bidding up the price. So people don't want to die. Milton Friedman called it the little blue pill. Then people would say, well, we spend too much money on healthcare. And Milton says, really? Okay, well, here's your choice. You're going to die tonight or you from a disease, or you buy this little pill from me and take it, and you won't die from the disease. So, Gitka, how much money would you give me for this pill?
Quite a bit.
Quite a bit?
Couple mil, probably.
What would your mom and dad give me?
I'd empty everything for it.
Yeah. So the bottom line is you would give me everything you have, your mom and dad would give, everybody would give you everything they have, yet people say, oh, we spend too much money on healthcare. So the point is, specialist. I mean, in 1900, one doctor would give you a haircut, pull your tooth, do everything, and those days are gone. So to specialize. So if you were coming out of a pandemic right now and you had a chance to go be a specialist, well, you just made $100,000 a year more. I mean, look at the specialist. Average oral maxillofacial surgeon, 448,000. They could get divorced every 5 years and still have money left over. Periodontist, 330. Endo, 307. Pediatric dentist, 304. And then you leave blood. Now, ortho, 289. Prosthodontist, 219. General practitioners, 197. But if it's a dentist who owns their own practice, it's 244. If it's a dentist who's an employee, it's 147. So you make an extra $100,000 a year working for you instead of someone else, and you make an extra $125,000 if you specialize. And it's all going to specialize. I'll tell you what, it's coming down the pipe on DSOs and even insurance and things like that is we know, and I know Delta Dental knows that if endodontists do 1 million root canals in 5 years, about 5% of them are extracted. If a general dentist does a molar root canal in 5 years, 10% are extracted. DSOs know that if you come out of school and they send you to some class and you learn how to place implants and you come and place 10 implants, then in the next 5 years, they're probably going to have to pay a specialist to redo half of them. So that they never made a dime, they lost money. So you keep seeing this trend towards specialization. The MDs are at 50% specialization and we're at 20%. I know where this is going. In my own practice, I have drawn the line now. No more general dentists placing an implant unless they're over 40 years old and done it a long time, because the young ones come, they try, but they're experimenting on my patients, and I warranty and I stand behind everything they do. So if they leave and go off to another job and it fails 2 years later, I'm going to redo it for free. And sometimes that's me, sometimes that's a periodontist, sometimes that's an oral surgeon. So I know a lot of the DSOs are trying to get it to where, especially in Arizona, because Arizona is the only state where we accept the dental license from any other state. And it all started with nurses. A lot of the hospitals in Arizona were going all the way to Ireland to get Irish nurses to come here because they couldn't find nurses. They might find a nurse, but she's from Texas and she doesn't want to go through the boards again. And so finally the Governor Ducey, who, by the way, Governor Ducey, I don't care if you like him or not, he's can't be reelected. It's 2 term limits. And he has 2 more years. So when people are listening to Doug Ducey and saying, oh, he's only doing this for the money, dude, he can't get reelected. He's not doing anything for the money. You might not agree with him, but he's honestly trying to make the best decision he can. He's not trying to get reelected. But Ducey said, this is crazy, and said, if you're a licensed professional in engineering, architect, nursing, whatever, you're good in Arizona. So that's why Arizona is ground zero for DSOs. In fact, 18% of the dentists in Arizona work for a DSO. And if you look at that long tail out, by the time you get to the last 5 states, they're not even 1%. And the DSOs here are loving it because they're trying to get endodontists from other states. They want endodontists to do all their molars and periodontists to place all their implants. And that just makes them faster, easier, less warranty, less lawsuits. So if you could go practice, if you could go do that, and let me give you another example, how people give up so early and then the hustlers don't. I know dentists that said they really wanted to be an endodontist, but they didn't get accepted in any programs. So they go out and buy the world's smallest violin, and they start playing, whoa, 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 poor, pitiful me. And I know other dentists said, oh, man, well, I love the ocean, and I just got accepted in Bahamas, Caribbean, Dominican Republic has 11 dental schools. You tell me you can't get an endo school in one of those 11? I'm pretty sure you can. And then when you come back and you go get your license, you get your license. You're board, you're licensed. You're an endodontist, and then you think that's bad. When I was little, the greatest endodontist at the time, there was no endo school. Like you take Ben Johnson out of Tulsa Dental. He didn't go to endo school. He started Tulsa Dental. He had practice limited endo. Back then, they just said, I hate all the other stuff. I'm just limiting my practice endo. John McSpadden, the McSpadden condenser, one of the greatest endodontists of all time. He never went to endo school. And I know kids that practiced for 5 or 6 years, and then just through networking, found a small town in Albuquerque in New Mexico, and he just happened to find out that there's 7 dentists in this town, and all 7 hate molar endo. So what did he do? He moved there and he said, practice limited to molar endo. I'm not having a hygienist. I'm not doing the crowns. I'm practice limited to molar endo. And that's what an endodontist start out is. But then the dental schools, who I have very mixed reviews about these dental schools because they're not keeping one eye on the customer or student and one eye on cost. They just have both eyes on your future earnings potential. And I watched that tuition drift up from $30,000 a year to $40,000 and was like, holy moly. Oh, they were just getting warmed up. Then it went to 50 to 60 to 70 to 80 to 90, 100. Look what they did at endo. No endo schools when I was a baby. And now and they're like, well, you should do a 1 year so we could get another $100,000. And then that was out for about 3 years. Like, well, actually, we're going to make it a 2-year program. Now all the programs are like 3 years. Dude, why don't you just chain them up in a cell and just sit there and steal all their future earnings potential? And then they have the nerve, these private dental schools, to send you a letter like, oh, will you donate to the Sacred Blessed Heart School? Because we're a nonprofit and we have like 150 faculty who make bank. And if you could just donate us some more money. I mean, you can't make this shit up. And they've taken their eye completely off cost. And now, and all the universities have done it. It's always a red flag when the price of something is growing 2 to 3 times the rate of inflation. I'm not seeing that in gasoline, housing. I'm not seeing that in food, energy, electricity, cars, auto. And then here's the growth for the economy, and then here's the cost of education. I mean, it just totally separated. Now the average American has $1 trillion of student loans. And what do? They went to the lawyers because in the Constitution it says you have the right to declare bankruptcy, and there's no such thing as a debtor's prison. But they raised enough money from enough bankers to actually pass a law that you can't declare bankruptcy on your student loans. So if you think your dental school's looking out for you, you're Stevie Wonder and you're drinking. They're not looking out for you. They're looking at your future earnings potential, and they're trying to extract all they can. So if I was you, and I got out of school in the pandemic, and I wanted to be an endodontist, and some endodontist in a small town wanted an associate or a partner or whatever, and would hire me and teach me like an apprentice, or you just go to your own practice limited endo where their accessibility is a problem. Obviously, the general dentists aren't going to refer to a 24-year-old kid practicing endo, but they will if it's in a small town of 10,000 and there's no endodontist. And then for the money that you spent on 1 year of endo school, you could go to every endodontic program and take every endodontic online course known to man. But you just believe, oh, well, the dental school is looking out for me, and they say I should give them another $100,000 a year for 3 years to get my certificate. Well, that's all valid. If you need validation, come by and I'll validate you. I'll just punch you in the head and say, you're validated. And I get in there and do a root canal. And you know how you're going to get good at endo? You're going to have to do 1,000 molars. You're not going to do 5 molars and then be an endodontist. You need to work hard. You need to do molars all day, every day. And by the way, the income for endodontists is drifting downwards because when I got here in 87, the average endodontist would do like 8 to 9 molars a day. And then they got microscopes. And they really slowed down, and now they're doing 4 to 5 molars a day. And so I always have to remind my endodontist that you're not doing brain surgery, you're not reattaching nerves. This isn't a paralyzed guy where if you don't do your job right, he'll never walk again. It's a tooth, and when you do them, 5% fail because they're cracked and whatever. And the dentists, when they do them, 10% fail. 90% work if you're a general dentist. 95% work if you're an endodontist. But I would really, again, I would lower, in review, I would lower your standard of living. I mean, why would you go buy a house when your mom and dad would probably pay you money to move into it? I mean, when my Ryan graduated from college and said, Dad, would you care if I moved in with you? I mean, I almost broke my head on the ceiling jumping up and down with joy that my boy was coming back after 4 years. And I know dentists in this town that graduated from these dental schools, $400,000 in debt. Their dad's a dentist in this town. I know the dad. And I said, well, obviously you're going to go live for free in your dad's basement, right? Well, no, my girlfriend and I, we're looking at this house over in Scottsdale, and it's only $500,000. Oh my God! So last year you were all wigged out about $400,000 student loans, and now you're buying a $500,000 house. And they always drive Beamers. I mean, go to that dental school, AT Still. It looks like it's a rich kid convention. I mean, you look at all those cars, and you're like, is this a drug dealing convention? Where do these people get all this money? Well, they just borrow it. And once you're borrowing $100,000 a year of other people's money, it doesn't even ring a bell to go borrow $68,000 for a BMW on a 7-year mortgage. They just get so used to borrowing money, it just keeps racking up. So I would live small, man. I would rent. I would not date anybody that doesn't have a job. When you go on a date and they bring the bill, if your date doesn't try to pay the bill or try to fight to pay the bill, then run. Just dine and dash, run, because that person's looking at you saying, oh, dentist, doctor, lawyer, I'll never have to work again. And if you think it's just a guy thing, it was just a guy thing when I was little, but now it's a girl thing. I mean, I could name names on this show, but I don't want to, of girls I know in this town. I swear to God, they would shoot their ex-husband. They'd never, because this is what they'll do. They'll sit there, and her husband decided he wanted a career change. So he quit his job. And then he started doing online. 1 year and 1 day after he quit his job, he filed for divorce. And of course, he's a stay-at-home husband without any source of income. And boom, the divorce, the payout's immense. So be smart with your living low. If you can live for free with your mom, do it. If you can buy a $1,000 car. By the way, if you think that you can't get a date because you're ugly and have a $1,000 car, well, go ahead and buy a red Ferrari. Now you're ugly and you drive a red Ferrari and you're still not going to get a date. The same with the mansions, the same with, all that stuff. Just live small and work hard. Here's another thing dentists do. They work 4 days a week. So Friday, Saturday, Sunday. Friday, they go play. Saturday, they go play. Sunday, they're bored. I mean, they've been doing nothing for 2 days. So what do? They go to Home Depot and start a $5,000 bathroom renovation project. Well, if you would have worked Friday and in like in Ahwatukee, there might be 80 dental offices Monday through Thursday. But on Friday, you're down to about 40. On Saturday, you're down to about 4. But you had to have a 3-day weekend. But your $400,000 of student loans, you bought a house, you're going to have a bunch of babies. It just doesn't add up. If you want a stay-home wife who's going to have 6 kids, then you're going to work 5 10-hour days. And if you're cool with that, I'm cool with that. I don't care what you do as long as it tickles, makes you happy, and you know what you're doing. What I don't like it is when something happens to you that you never saw coming when all the old dentists could see it coming a mile away. So live below your means. If you can't, when someone pays you $1, if you can't put a nickel in the bank to never touch it again, what is that book? What is it? Anyway, forget it anyway. But the bottom line, if you can't save 5% of every one of your paychecks that you never see again. I'll remember the first time my comptroller told me, she said, hey, congratulations. I said, what's that? She goes, your savings, it just passed $1 million. And it's like, I had already forgot about it. I swore I would never look at it. And I don't ever look at it unless my comptroller tells me. I don't even look at it because that's like a worst case scenario thing. I'm still going to work. I'm still going to try to get people out of pain. I'm still going to do my dentistry thing. You just keep on plowing your garden. But yeah, if you can get into specialty school, do it. Oral surgeons in Phoenix, Arizona. When oral surgeons come to town, their base pay is $350,000 base pay versus 45% of their production. Whereas a dentist base pay might be 400, 500 a day versus 25% of production. Specialize. And what's the worst thing about specialization? That you have to spend 2 years on an island in the Caribbean? Cry me a river. Worse things have happened to you than going to the Bahamas for 2 years and in dental school down there. Again, I don't know what question I'm answering at this point, so I'll go back to the questions.
I have a question. If this is just also hypothetical, but assume that I had $100,000 in savings or something. Would you rather put that $100,000 down to pay off your student loans, or would you rather put that towards a practice, like a down payment towards a practice?
Okay, that's a great question. Never let your money get too far from cash. So you have someone who wants an investment, so they buy a piece of land up north because they think that's a good investment. But then they need the money and they go to sell it, and it turns out it takes 2 years to sell, and they had to lower the price 25%. You know, whereas when I put money in the stock market, I can turn that back into cash instantly in 1 second. So I only like spending money on something that generates cash. So you have student loans. You have $100,000 student loans. You pay off $100,000 student loans. Okay, tomorrow, how does that feed me for breakfast? If I bought a $100,000 practice and tomorrow I went in there and someone broke their tooth and I did a crown for $1,000, I can go out for dinner that night. So I would rather buy a cash flow. And a lot of dentists don't get it because they'll be like $1 million practice. They'll say, well, I don't want to buy something for $1 million. I want to buy something for $500,000. You're buying a cash flow. So if I bought this practice, how much money would I net? And sometimes it'll be a married man with 3 kids. And I'm like, you know, your wife's a spender. You got a big family. You need to buy something that can throw her $10,000 a month throwaway money. Then you got tax on that. So you need to buy this $1 million machine. And then other people don't have to do that. So it depends on how much cash you want. But you can buy the cash flow machine if you can do the dentistry. But I would rather you buy a cash flow generating machine than pay down debt or go buy a piece of land. The other thing is, the Buffett index. You know, I went to Creighton in 1980. That's Omaha, Nebraska, or the Oracle Omaha. I was so young and dumb that when Warren Buffett came over and lectured to our class, I thought he was like the dumbest guy I'd ever met because everybody was talking him up. So I'm all excited in the Nifty 50, and I'm like, well, tell me about Xerox and Kodak, and tell me about all these high technology companies. And he's like, you know, buying C's chocolate, and he's buying all these lame. He says, I don't understand this stuff. He says, I take out a 5x7 index card, and I give it to the guy and say, tell me how I make money on a 5x7 index card. And if you can't tell me how you make money in your business on a 5x7 index card, you don't know about making money. I don't know how Kodak works. I don't know how that stuff. But I know how these farms work, these restaurants, this company that builds trailer parks or trailer homes or See's Candy. But he did teach me something unbelievable. He said, look, it was called the Buffett Index. He said, look, when you're inside a country, look at their GDP. Like America's GDP is like, $19 trillion. The global GDP is about $79 trillion. That's for last year before the corona. And he said, well, all the publicly traded stocks in that country obviously are worth less than the country. And yeah, historically, it should be worth about 2/3 of the country. Well, now the stocks of America's stock companies, the S&P 500, is worth about 125% of the economy. I mean, it just doesn't make sense. And every time that happens, it always corrects back to the mean. Another one is real estate. Like, for easy math, let's say that you buy a $100,000 home, 10% interest, and it's a $1,000 a month payment, okay? Well, the rental rate should be at least 85% of that. So if my mortgage is $1,000 a month, I should easily be able to rent it out for $850. And it's really cool if you can rent it out for your mortgage rate. Well, every time the real estate goes insane, the rental rate falls to half of the mortgage rate. So now you have a $2,000 mortgage, and you could only rent it out for $1,000. Well, you know it's going to trend back toward the mean. So right now, a year before the coronavirus hit, and then the other thing you're going to see is the cycles. Like the worst cycle I ever saw coming down was 1980. We had 21% interest rates, double-digit unemployment, inflation. That was the worst I'd ever seen, including to now. And then 87, I graduated May 11. Black Monday was October of 87. And then I had the longest build-up. And then the Y2K bubble popped in 2000. I'm afraid to even ask how old you guys were in 2000. I don't know if you can remember that or not. And then 2008 was Lehman Brothers Day, and it was 2019 was 11 years ago. Warren Buffett hasn't bought anything the year before the impact. The stocks are worth more than the GDP, so the Buffett index is now over the 100% mark. It got up to about 125%, and all these things are wrong. Well, the reason there's a cycle, the reason Joseph Schumpeter got a Nobel Prize in economics, the Austrian economist, one of my favorite economists of all time, like with Milton Friedman, is the fact that, well, who's making all the decisions? A bunch of monkeys who lost their tail a million years ago. They're not the brightest animal. They might be the brightest animal in the jungle, but they're not that bright. And about 10 years of making really bad decisions, usually it crashes and cleans up. So it's a very healthy cycle. So this coronavirus hit about a year after everybody started knowing the stock market was due for a correction. The rental rates were too high. We had multiple bubbles going on in stocks, bonds, real estate. So I imagine this is going to be a really good crash, a really much needed crash. So there might be a chance where you have 100,000 and really solid companies that you know are going to be around for 10, 20, 30 years might get down to 50, 60, 70, 80% off. So if you have a very long perspective, you might want to buy at the dips because the smart people buy low and sell high, and the crowd buys high and sells low. Because when they see everybody making money in a stock like Tesla now, I remember when Netflix passed Disney in value, and I'm like, okay, Disney has that little Disney World thing in Disneyland, and they own ESPN and ABC. They have, really? I know, and why do you love it? Because you watch Netflix 20 hours a day. So you think it's worth all that, but Netflix was never worth more than Disney, but the market thought it was. So markets get very irrational, they get very exuberant, they get very silly, and old people who have lived through, I've lived through the 80, 87, 2000, and 2008. I've lived through 4 crashes. So this is my 5th. I saw this thing coming a year and a half ago. Warren Buffett saw. Everybody knew there was no value here. But who are these people loading up on Tesla today? When it's just they fell in love with Elon Musk, and I don't it must be, I don't know if it's his hair or it's his solid rocket boosters or I don't know what it is. Interesting guy, but he's a salesman. And I don't see the efficient cost and all that kind of stuff. I don't see the protective moat around his business. He's making an electric car with batteries. You really think Mercedes can't figure that out? Honda, really? Toyota, really? Volvo, really? Elon, the electric car on batteries, that's all you, buddy. No one else can figure this out. Same thing with the rockets. I don't see the protective moat around there to justify those earnings. Again, I don't even know what question I'm answering at this point. I'm just ranting.
There we go. So our next question was, what are your thoughts on GPRs and AGDs? I know everybody has an individual case, but
yeah, it's so here's what I think. So the square is the question, right? That's a decision. I need a job. The triangle is what you decided. The circles are all your choices. When you study decision making, the error is never the question. They're always a valid question. And the solution, the triangle, it was always a good solution. But the reason it wasn't the best solution is because you didn't fill out your circles. And that's all decision making theory has ever proven. Ever since I read my first book on decision making theory to the last book, nothing's changed. It's kind of like geometry. It's kind of like my 30-day MBA. I put up on YouTube. It's free on YouTube. It's free on iTunes, and I can't believe how many kids watch it, and they say, oh my God, I loved it. And I said, well, I filmed that in 1998. I signed up to ASU, and I bought my first laptop, and I said, I'm going to take notes just of what you're teaching me that apply to a dental office. So it was 2 years, and when I was done, I rented a studio. I rented it out. It was 30 hours long. So we just called it the 30-day dental MBA because I just chopped it in 30 one-hour segments. And it's all free on YouTube and iTunes. But the bottom line is, I started talking about that, and I forgot what the question was. Residencies and things like that. Well, if you fill out your circles and the best option you have is a GPR at this place for 100,000, that's good. But I'll go look at housing. Like you'll look at this house and your wife will say, "Ah, man, it's perfect. Let's get it. It's everything we always wanted." And then you buy the house. Then you find out a week later there was another house a mile away that was actually even better for less price. You didn't look at all. You didn't fill out your circles. If the GPR is your best circle, that's great. But did you go talk to Benco, Patterson, Shine? Did you go look at all the classified ads on Dental Town? There's 1,000 classified ads. There's 2,000 practices for sale. Where is your wife from? Where is your family from? I mean, you might think, well, who the hell would want to live in Iowa? Then it turns out that your wife's sister's roommate's brother's cousin actually is the mayor of Iowa, or whatever. And then you find out there's some guy selling $1 million practice. It's been for sale for 2 years. Nobody's even biting on it because it's in a town of 6,000. So again, in decision making, what do they always tell you? Don't make a rash decision. Don't make a quick decision. Why does everybody try to do it like, well, it's a 4th of July weekend sale. Well, if you don't buy it on the 4th of July, well, you can't buy this on the 5th of July at the same price. Ma'am, I could buy it on July of next year at this price, okay? So everybody tries to create an artificial crisis of why you got to buy now. You know what I mean? That you got to buy now or you're going to lose it. No. Fill out your circles. Slow down, Spanky. Did you check for every job available? Did you check for every GPR? Did you look at becoming a specialist? I can guarantee you right now there is a national shortage of oral surgeons, periodontists, and pediatric dentists. If something, I don't know what goes wrong in your head where you wake up one day and say, I want to be a pediatric dentist, and hear kids scream and cry and yell for the rest of your life. I mean, what alcoholism wasn't it? Why didn't you become a bartender and just drink behind the bar? But God loved the pediatric dentist. I don't know how they do it. I mean, if my only circle in dentistry was the pediatric dentist and my other option was the night shift at the IHOP for minimum wage, I would work at the IHOP for free. I'd work there for free. I mean, I can't stand pediatric dentists. And my 4 boys have turned into 6 grandchildren. I don't even like working on my grandchildren. I mean, it's just something about it. But if my God, if you, the need for these specialties and the fact that you can go pick them up in the Caribbean and Costa Rica and Grenada, all these places, you can go get these specialty degrees. If you fill out all your circles and the best circle is a GPR, then go do the GPR. But I seriously doubt that's going to be your best circle. I mean, I don't know where you're living or what you found, but I don't know where the GPR could be the best circle. And if the GPR is the best circle, then make sure you know the head person. Make sure that you can take a side job on Saturdays. There's all these big DSOs. They always need help on Saturdays, Sundays, whatever. And if you got a DSO, then you find out after you start that, no, you're not allowed to have an evening job or a weekend job. It's just all the GPR. But I know some GPRs in New Jersey that half the gig of the GPR gig is you can work all the evenings and weekends you want at all these dental offices all around New Jersey because the director is in the know. He knows your kids are young. He knows you're hungry. He knows you want experience and you want cash. And, if they have that mindset, like, we're going to work you to death. You're going to be here 5 days a week. We can get you hooked up with evening and weekend jobs, all that kind of stuff, then I would do the GPR. But just slow down. Fill out all your circles. And if any of you kids ever bring me all your circles, you bring me your square, your triangle, and all 6 circles are filled out, I can add 6 more circles in 10 minutes.
What do you mean by circles and things like that? You're kind of lost me there.
Let's go back to the housing deal. So you want to buy a house and you looked at one house and you think it's perfect and you bought it. Oh, I'd say, well, how many houses were for sale? Let's say that you wanted that Michael just had to live in Ahwatukee, because it's the greatest city. It is the best part of Phoenix. Well, and you bought a house there, and you only had $100,000. Well, did you look at every house that was for $100,000? Did you look at every single one? No, you looked at 3. And you looked at the 3 that the broker wanted to show you because she probably has incentives to show you those 3. So in dentistry, you're graduating from dental school. You tell me you want to be an endodontist, but you didn't get accepted. But you didn't apply to any endo school outside of the United States of America. You didn't apply to one in all of North America outside of the United States. You tell me that you wanted to by a practice, but you went to Skank of America. I'm sorry, it's Bank of America. I always pronounce that wrong. And they didn't approve your loan. Okay, well, did you go to Chase? Did you go to Wells Fargo? Did you go? How many banks turned you down? Oh, just one. I tried one time and it got turned down, so I crossed it off. That's one circle. Man, people that hustle, they can find 12 circles, and if none of them work out, they can find 5 more circles to finally get what they want. Keep filling out your circles. Was that Chad?
Yeah,
How
that
come
was my
Chad
question.
is a still picture? Whenever you're on Zoom and it's a still picture, he's just sitting back there half naked, drinking beer. He's probably
That is probably Chad.
Very true.
Yeah, Chad.
Very
Well, I
true.
got your number, Chad. I know why you put a still picture up there. I know, buddy. But
Thank you.
what other But so Chad, where are you from?
I'm from Los Angeles.
Are you going back to LA?
I'm debating because I was looking at some GPRs there and I was looking at some GPRs out here in AEGDs, but it was just more so to gain experience because COVID kind of halted that a little bit within dental school.
And what year are you? 3rd or 4th?
I'm a 4th year.
Yeah, 4th year. Well, on Dental Town, there's 1,000 jobs for that, and they're all DSOs. And I mean, I would see which ones are. I mean, I'm afraid. I bet you could do a lot more dentistry work in Heartland than you could in a general practice residency. I just really believe that.
Yeah, it's more so just about gaining experience, for the future as much as possible in 1 year.
I mean, I don't want to read another book on giving a lower block. I would think you should go out there and give 1,000 lower blocks. I mean, eventually you'll give so many lower blocks you can close your eyes when you give them. But it's like football. You need to know how to block, tackle, throw, and catch a pass. And in dentistry, you need to know how to do your cleaning exams, X-rays, simple filling, simple crown and bridge, basic endo, and you need to do those 1,000 times before you really start to get good. And you need to do it 10,000 times before you're the best one in your area on it. I mean, anybody who's done 10,000 molars is the best endodontist in town. And the kid who's done 3 molars, it's not. And that's another thing about networking. It's really nice to really screw up a root canal, but you've gone drinking with your endodontist 4 times and it's not a problem. I mean, I don't understand why people don't have relationships with people that can get them out of trouble. I got oral surgeons that can fix any mistake me or my associates do. Same with periodontists, endodontists, pediatric dentists, orthodontists, prosthodontists. And I see all these introvert dentists who have 0 relationships with their backyard. And every time they want to learn something, they have to get in an airplane and fly across the country. When I could, half the endodontists in Arizona, if you said, I don't work on Wednesday, can I just come and assist your assistant and watch? Well, who the hell would say no to that? I mean, number 1, it's always fun to teach. Number 2, you might be a referral someday. Number 3, my assistant loves it because now I'm not going to tell her all my dad jokes. Now I got someone else to tell all my bad jokes to. And it's just, I mean, they love it. And then you screw up the molar root canal. And he knows you're good. He came down there. You're all in this together. And he's like, don't worry, I'll fix this, blah, 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 blah. So I really want you to learn how to do dentistry by people from your own tribe. And your own tribe, like we're in Arizona. Your friends of a friend of a friend are on the board or at the licensing committee or at the dental school or whatever. So I would always focus on your own tribe.
So you like working more so out of DSO out of the first year and spend time networking more than the option of a GPR AEGD in terms of gaining experience and making the right connections is what
there's some really okay. So if I go to Dental Town and here's back to circle. So there's no world according to how I'm only a legend in my own mind, no one else's mind. So you want to fill out more circles. So if I go to Dental Town and I type in GPR, I just pulled up 1,564 threads on GPRs. And so then I'll click sort by date, and then I'm going to hit sort by rank. And first one, is a Navy GPR AEGD worthwhile? And you get to hear all these replies. So that's, and also, you know, this guy's from New Jersey. This next one's from North Carolina, on and on and on. But I would not ever do the world according to what Howard said. I would find out a bunch of sources. And I think the great thing about Dental Town is it's 6 million posts that are all archived and searchable. If I follow you on Facebook and I sit there and say, oh, remember a year ago when you broke that file off and you showed how to get out a broken file? What am I supposed to do? Go to your Facebook page and just start scrolling back for half a year? I mean, and then the other thing about Facebook and Twitter, I notice on Facebook, like, if you're against fluoride, and someone gets on there and starts saying they're for water fluoridation, well, shit, they're not going to listen to you. They just ban you. And what you see in social media, it's balkanized. Like my mom, my 2 oldest sisters are Catholic nuns. My mom's on a Facebook group. Guess what % of the people on her Facebook group are over 70 and go to the exact same singular Roman Catholic church in Wichita, Kansas? All of them. All of them. Now, if she went on that group and started saying, you know, something about, you know, birth control, whatever, they just ban her. What I like about Dental Town is you're not going to be able to form a bubble. You're not going to be able to delete everybody and live in a bubble. I'll give you some low hanging for examples. Like amalgams last twice as long as composites. I guarantee you 80% of the dentists don't even believe that. I mean, okay, so one's metal and one's plastic. Do you think there's anybody living in the dumpster at KFC who thinks the white plastic fork at KFC is stronger than the metal one in their kitchen drawer at home? I mean, a crack addict would know the metal one is stronger. Number 2, the fillings fail from biological invasion. Well, the mercury filling, the silver filling is half mercury. You'll never find mercury in a multivitamin. The other half is silver diamine fluoride, zinc, tannous fluoride, you know, zinc, tin. I mean, the whole thing's metal and toxic. And yet a dentist thinks an inert plastic white filling, this is going to last longer than an MOD amalgam. I mean, and it just shows you the human mentality where humans want to believe. I mean, they want to believe, and if they want to believe that composites last longer than amalgam, they'll just believe it, and they don't even care. Well, that nature of the human being, it really helps if you have people around you that aren't yes men. And you see it in dentistry all the time. Like, go to a dental office staff meeting, and the dentist does all the talking. And the assistants are like rolling their eyes. No one says anything. Well, they're not going to say anything because they're afraid if they say it, it'll be held against them. Or if you disagree with them, the doctor will get mad at you. I call it the Saddam Hussein syndrome. I mean, Saddam Hussein's generals told him when he asked them, well, if America invades us, I mean, would we win? Everybody said, of course you would win. He didn't even last 100 hours because if you would have told Saddam Hussein, well, hell no, you're not going to win. They're going to blow your head off. You'll lose all your troops in a day. Well, he would have shot you for saying that. So would have Stalin. So would have Mao Zedong. So would have Idi Amin. These people don't like anyone deviating from the talking points inside their bubble. Well, you need to be hanging out in a place like that. In Dental Town, no one's there because they're worried about your feelings. And if you say something that's absolutely wrong, they're all going to pop your bubble. But your mom's not going to do that. Your dad's not going to do that. And don't work in a dental office that does that. I remember the only reason I have so many staff that have been with me over 20 years is because they veto half of what I say. Oh, I hear you, Howard, but I don't think that's going to work. I think we should do this. And you need that. You need competition for your ideas. You need to be able to say an idea and have people on the same team that say, that's a horrible idea. But if no one's going to tell you it's a horrible idea, the next thing you start doing is believing it. So there's a lot of logic. Religion calls it yin yang. Well, you say yes. Well, who's saying no? Oh, everybody in the rooms. That's why global warming is so unbelievable to the masses because, well, they say, well, 99.8% of all the scientists agree. Okay, well, you couldn't get 98% of the dentists to agree that today is Tuesday. How the hell? I mean, when you go into the particle physics, when you look at with the Big Bang, was that the initial deal, or was there, a bang on the other side? Was it just? I mean, you can't even get half the physicists to agree on one thing. Oh, but 99.9% of all the scientists agree on global warming. I mean, even if that was true, which it's not, you would never say that. Because now it's just like, oh, well, are they all working on global warming grants? I mean, are these all university professors that if they say something other, they're going to get fired? I mean, the nature of human beings is arguing. And if we're on the same team and we're not doing straw man deals, like if you say, well, I think we should open up on Saturday, and your response is, well, you're bald and fat. Well, what does that have to do with being open? That's a straw man. You didn't go after my argument. You just tried to say something about it. Maybe you see it in politics all the time. Well, that guy said that we should do this. Oh, yeah, well, he had an affair on his wife 20 years ago. Okay, what does that have to do with this healthcare policy initiative? So I'm not into straw man arguments, and I want you to always have an intellectually competitive environment. And I think in dentistry, Dental Town is the best one because Facebook, you just delete. And by the way, I have 300,000 followers on Facebook. I haven't been on it since I think the last day when the pandemic broke. I cleared out my calendar. And Facebook didn't make the list. I mean, that one was gone. I mean, I had a lot of stuff, and I didn't have time for that anymore. But the bottom line, I want you to be in a healthy, competitive relationship. Same thing with your staff. I've seen so many abusive dentists where the assistant will say, well, why do you have to redo that crown? Well, if you want to know, go to dental school. It's like, dude, you're trying to sell this to the patient, and you can't even explain it to your assistant and your hygienist. And then when you leave the room and she says, do I really need to get a new crown? And she goes, like that? It's killed. It's killed. That's why the customer's not right. The staff is right. My team comes first. My patients come second. And I have to get all my team on board. And if my assistant doesn't think that this is a cavity that needs to be filled, well, I don't care if the patient agrees or disagrees. I got an issue. So what I would do is when I did the filling, I would drill it halfway out, and the hygienist's like, no, that's a watch. I worked for Dr. Good for 10 years, and that's a watch. And I said, okay. But I think I'm going to do it, and I recommend doing it, and the patient does it. Then when I broke through the contact, and now you're ready to switch to a number 4 round burr and take out oatmeal, I'd stop, go get the hygienist. Hey, Missy, come here. I want you to look in here. And she's like, oh, my God. And she's down there with a spoon and a taking out mush, looking at the x-ray and say, well, in hygiene school, they told you only 40% of the lesion shows up on the x-ray. So 60% doesn't show up. And so when you look at that lesion, what does this look like bigger? And then it's really lucky for me because if I'm doing the restorative, I get to go in there and see what the hell was in there. So I see what it looks like, and then I go in there. But the hygienist is seeing what it looks like, and she's not going in there because you're not bringing her in there. So you got to get everybody on trust. Everybody can talk. Everyone can disagree. Everyone can argue passionately because we're all on the same team. And then those skills will get the patients to increase the acceptance rate. But if you can't sell your assistant, receptionist, and hygienist, you're not going to sell your patients.
Okay, so I don't know how well you're doing on time, Dr. Fran, but I'm probably
It's Howard, and I'll stay till 3 o'clock in the morning for you kids.
Old habits die hard. Okay, Howard. Say it 3 times. Howard. There we go. I'll open up the questions for the last few minutes to anybody that's viewing. You could just ask.
Okay, at this point, I don't even think Natalie's there. I haven't heard anything from her.
Yeah.
I think Natalie and Dinesh are at the bar doing Jello shots.
They both.
I'm here.
I can't even tell you're at the bar now. How did you do that?
I'm actually in my car. So that's why I've been having pretty bad service, which is why my video hasn't been on.
Well, does Natalie or Dinesh have a question?
They both have questions, actually.
I do have a question. So I happen to be one of those examples of the spouse and those spouses being a dentist one day. And I was wondering what your advice Oh, sorry.
You're-
Was that on
Okay,
me?
your sound's back. Okay, now ask the question again.
I was wondering about the spouses, where both of them are dentists, because that's eventually going to be the case for my husband and I. So I was wanting to know,
Who's your
like,
husband, Dinesh?
no,
Oh, but you're gonna marry
he's a
a
first
guy in
year,
your
I'm
class.
a fourth year.
Okay.
Oh, not that either. He's a first year, I'm a fourth year. We're already married 3 years through my dental
Oh,
school.
nice.
So I was wondering more like, what have you seen work? Like same office, different office?
That is a very great question, and it's very
I don't
easy to
know.
answer.
Just what I'm not in dentistry.
Yeah. Can you hear me now? So that's a really great question. And all you need to know is that the employees need an org chart. Every time, if you go in that office, there's got to be a general, a colonel, sergeants, and infantry, right? And where we have a problem is the husband's a dentist and the wife is an office manager. And the wife says, go right. And then the husband says, go left. And the staff are in the middle and they're getting torn two ways. So when there's ever, I would definitely recommend one office because now you only have one rent, one electric, one mortgage, one equipment, one build out, one computer, one insurance, one updates. And we got two dentists working one facility. But those staff, when there's two of you, the staff needs to know who is the president, who is the vice president, who is, it's like Pope, Cardinal, Bishop, Priest, Altar Boy, and then you in the pew. And where it's a disaster is when nobody knows who's the leader. And it's really cool because usually in a couple like that, one of them is usually, maybe they're more better with people and they're better with HR staff. And then maybe the dentist is better with accounting or says, I'm just going to really focus on placing implants and doing molar endo. But where I don't want is they go in there and the husband says, yes, I think we should get a CIRAC machine. And the wife says, I don't think we should get a CIRAC machine. And then the kids are all torn and they don't know what to do. And that's always the stress. So all the stress is an org chart. And how you get an org chart is very simple. I love my staff, but when they come to me with HR, I want to hear all their problem. They tell me the whole thing. And then when they're done telling me the problem, I just say, wow. And then I know who they report to. And I say, well, what did Dawn say? And they're just looking at me like, well, I didn't want you to say that. I already know what the hell Dawn says. And obviously told me something I didn't want to hear. That's why I'm asking you. The kids do it. I have 4 boys. When the boys would come to me and they'd run clear across the room and they'd say, Dad, can I have a cookie? What's the only reason they would run clear across the house and ask me? Because someone already told them no and put the cookies up too high for them to reach. And so I'm now second fiddle and they're hoping that I overthrow their mom's decision. So I want an org chart that's written in paper, no confusion. Obviously, if you're going to rent a dental office or buy a dental office, it's cheaper if 2 people work there. In marriage, it's great to have communication. I know when you're young, it's all this and that and bling and dancing and all that. But as you get older, it's nice to be on the same page about your employees, your patients, your finances, and things like that. And I just think it's just the greatest thing. I mean, and when I look at the richest dentists I know, it's always met in dental school, and they're both dentists, and they're both doing $1 million a year out of one dental office, and it's good. It's great if someone gets sick or a problem, or it's just great. So congratulations on robbing the cradle and going into that first year and get some kid that couldn't read or write. And you get them young enough, you can train them, obviously. So I'm all for it. Get the same office, but look at the skill set. Who is better with the staff? Who's better? And that's what you call your front man. And every band has a front man. Like you might go to a band and say, oh, well, Mick Jagger or Bono is the front man. You don't know who's running that band. He's the lead man. He's the singer, but somebody's running the band. And the employees need to know that's one person. And that's one person only. And you give them any chance that they can pry you two apart. That's called game theory. And then the whole house of cards comes down. So great job marrying another dentist. Buy a practice. Somebody's the front man and somebody's the back band.
Perfect. Thank you.
Oh, thank you, Natalie, and congratulations and good luck on that.
I actually had a question as well. I'm here.
Oh, Dinesh finally graces us with his presence.
I'm not drinking just yet, so. My question was, first of all, thank you for being here and thank you for telling us all of this. My question was, what are the best ways to reduce your overhead in a practice?
Oh man, that's okay. So God, I could talk about that for 40 days and 40 nights. So let's just get it out. The first overhead is when they don't even record it anymore. I mean, when I got out of school, you would send the insurance company your fee for what you did, and they just either paid 100% for clean exams and X-rays, 80% for fillings and endo, 50% crowns and removal. So I do a crown, I'd send them $1,000 bill, and they'd pay $500. Well, after about a decade of that, they changed it around. They said, no, we're going to send you the fee. And the fee nationally across the country is about 42% lower. So in 87, I got paid $1,000 for a crown. In 2020, I get paid $650. So about 42% of all overhead is adjusted production, where you charge $1,000 and insurance pays $650. So without a doubt, the number one overhead is taking all these insurance. And 95% of all the dentists in America take Delta Dental. So when they tell you that they don't take any PPOs, okay, well, 95% of them do. And the only 5% that don't are either specialists so busy, booked so far in advance, or they're in small town areas where if you don't want to do it my way, you can drive 2 hours into town. Number two is labor. I mean, you got dentists out there that, I know some of my best friends, they schedule an hour and a half for a crown. The assistant seats the room, seats the patient. They'll go in there and numb and then take off their gloves and go back and get on Facebook for 15 minutes while it's soaking in. And then they'll come back and they'll prep the tooth. Then they'll leave, take off their gloves and mask, and the assistant will spend 15 minutes packing cord. And then they'll go back there and take an impression and then leave and give the assistant a half an hour to make a temporary, and the patient's in there an hour and a half. Then you got other guys like me that'll go in there and they'll numb the patient, and they'll use Septicane, and they'll set a timer for 4 minutes. And while that's setting for 4 minutes, I'll take the shade. Unless they're as old as me and have a liver spot, it's just an A35. I only actually get out the shade guide if they have a chance, and I'll take the shade, fill out the last script. When I hear the thing ding, I pack the cord. I can pack a 0 cord and a 1 cord in 2 minutes. And then that pushes the tissue down and out. So now I'm not going to nick the gums and cause bleeding. So then I take a 57, take out the contacts, do my reduction, do the prep. And when I think it's all ready, then I make my temporary. Because I can figure out all my problems in the temporary. Like, I go to make a temporary and I'm adjusting the temporary and I adjust through the occlusion. Well, now I know I don't have enough clearance. So I do more reduction. And if I can't read the margin on a temporary, well, how the hell am I going to read it anywhere else? And then when I'm all done with the temporary, then back in the day, I'd take an Impergum, or now you could scan it or whatever, and then you're done. You make temporary. Anyway, the whole appointment's 30 minutes. Never have a reduction coping. 30 minutes. You're over there with an hour and a half. Well, you had 2 times more labor. So number one overhead, 42% is your adjusted production taking the insurance. Number 2 is labor, and we say we'd like to see that about 25%, but you'll see it go all the way up into the low 30s. Then 3 is lab bill, and I don't think lab bill is a problem, because I'd rather pay $140 for a unit that takes me 1 minute to seat than $80 for a unit that takes me a half hour to grind in, and the patient's lost confidence. Are you grinding on my new crown? And why is my new crown? So I just want it to work. And then number 3 would be supplies. Supplies 4 to 6%. Who cares? I go in a dental office and they try to reduce your overhead by putting a lockbox over the thermostat. Come on, you got a 400-pounder who's in menopause. You got little anorexia over here. I'm not locking up the thermostat. It's all about your price, your collection policy, the insurance deals you set up, and labor. And after you pay your labor, nobody cares what the electric bill is. And when I go into dental offices, there's 2 times offices. There's a dentist who basically doesn't want to work. He numbs, leaves, preps, leaves. He's just always leaving. Then there's that other dentist that he'll only leave the room if he can go work really hard over there. So I have this mental checklist. I've walked into 1,000 dental offices in my lifetime, at least. Guess where the dentist was 75% of the time?
In their office.
In their office. And I'm like, well, what are you doing back here? Well, the hygienist's doing the cleaning. Well, someone just called the front and says, can I get my teeth cleaned today? And you have nothing for an hour. And they said no because you told them you don't do cleanings. So you're back here on Facebook and Instagram and whatever the hell. They're just lazy. And I don't call people lazy because in biology, it's not lazy. I mean, after a bunch of lions eat a gazelle, they don't go working out at the gym and do marathons. They just lay around and sleep for 3 days until they're hungry. They only get up and move when they have to. So when your kid's sitting on the couch, he's conserving energy. I mean, if you go back the last million years and every human had to run 6 miles before they went to bed, we might have already gone extinct by now. So it's natural to be lazy. Another thing I don't like is when people say that Americans are so non-trusting. Name me one animal in the animal kingdom that's trusting. Do you see someone skipping through the jungle saying, oh, hi, look at that little panther. I'm going to go pet him, and I wonder what this little red berry tastes like. The whole animal kingdom is scared shitless. They don't want to come out of their cave. They're afraid to eat anything. They're afraid of noises. They're not lazy. They're conserving energy, and they don't want to be eaten. Everybody's predator or prey. So what do dentists do? Obviously, they have massive food shortages because they're all conserving energy in their private office. They're never doing a cleaning. They'll be booked out for cleanings. And my front office knows that, hey, if he's got a 40-minute cancellation and someone needs a cleaning, he'll do it. I'll work through. I told my staff, I mean, when I got married, my wife my ex was from Kansas. She was Catholic. So she had 4 kids in 3 days. And I mean, so of course I would work through lunch. Of course I would stay at the end of the day. I would do anything. So your staff either knows that they can book you 7 to 7, but a lot of dentists are like, well, if you schedule that patient, they're going to get here at 4:30. I get off at 5. And then they really make you feel bad. So then they never do it again. And then you have less production. But I'm sitting there thinking, my God, if 4 o'clock it's a toothache, first of all, they don't even know their break-even point, their BAM number, bare ass minimum break-even point. Let's say your break-even point is $2,000 a day, and you didn't even reach it till 2. And then you had a cancellation. Then at 4 o'clock, someone called up and broke a tooth, but they're not going to get there here till 5 when you close. But it's $1,000 crown, and you already paid your break-even point. So this $1,000 crown goes into your wallet. It's bare. You paid your bills. You paid your rent, mortgage, equipment bill, that computer, insurance, malpractice. You paid all your bills and don't even know it. That's like beyond frightening me. So you know the Krebs cycle. You know that glucose shits out 21 ATP when it eats a glucose, but you don't know your break-even point at your dental office. And when you do know your break-even point, you're like, oh my gosh, it took till 1:30 today to pay the bills. Everything else is gravy. And then when someone comes up and says, well, your last appointment's scheduled. Well, if you don't know your break-even point, you're like, hell yeah, I'm going home early. I get to leave in 20 minutes. But you know your break-even point, you're like, oh my God, we didn't even pay the bills till 2. And then my 2 o'clock canceled. And then you said at 3 o'clock, you got a toothache that can be here by 4. Well, that might be a root canal, build-up, and crown, $2,500, 2.5 hours. I mean, I'll get in there, I'll numb it up. The first thing I do is I prepare for my final restoration because sometimes there's nothing to fix after the root canal. And then when you do your final restoration first, the top comes down. You don't have cusp. You don't have like one file, 21 millimeters, and this one 19 millimeters, and this one, because it's leveled off, it's reduced. You can see better. You do the root canal, you do the buildup, and then when you're done, you scan it, you mill it, and they got there at 4, and they left at maybe 6, and it was $2,500, and you were already in the profit zone. So you know what that $2,500 is? That's in your checking account. That's cash. Go home and tell your wife you made an extra $2,500 cash. That's why you're home an hour late. Yeah, she'll remake you the dinner from scratch. I mean, everyone's happy. But when you don't know your break-even point and you're lazy and you don't know what's going on, the overhead drifts up, the profitability goes. Let me put it this way. If you're a dentist in the United States of America and you can't take home $20,000 a month free cash, something's incredibly wrong. And it usually is that you're on your computer, you're on Facebook 24 hours a day. You know, I mean, I wouldn't get mad at you if it was ESPN and you were watching the Cardinals. I mean, that Nobody has enough discipline to pull themselves away from that. But I'm telling you, just work. And that's not what people want to hear on the lecture circuit. They don't want to hear, well, you're dumb, fat, and lazy. You got to try working really hard for once. Just try it for a day. Just really try working hard for a day. They always want to hear there's some trick. There's no trick to working through lunch. There's no trick to staying at the end of the day. There's no trick for doing an emergency on Saturday. The people that make it are hustling hard. And they like it. I mean, they actually like to work. You know?
Thank you.
All right, gentlemen. Any final questions? I can just tell by Natalie's face she's got a question. She just has that question mark face look. Natalie, what is your question? Nope. She's good. Everyone good?
I got one more question for you.
All right, Chad with 2 Ds.
Yes. So when you're talking about working at like a rural area because there's a certain population base there, is the hardest part when we get out of dentistry patient acquisition, or what is the main driver of like how much money you're making? Is it truly patient acquisition is the hardest part? Like there's not enough patients for the dentist, or where is like the biggest struggle at to increase your profitability?
Well, that's a really great question, and let me see if I got. Well, okay. Well, first of all, let me see if I got the easiest way to explain that, because that's a really good question. The problem is the dentists get addicted to drugs, and I'm not talking about Vicodin and heroin and alcohol. I know your last name's McAlpin, so I assume you're an Irish and have a bottle of Jameson open right now.
Yeah.
But the problem is, I thought I might have had a chart there, but where is that? But the bottom line is, if you get 20, let me spend one more minute looking for this front chart because I did it really nice. Okay, here it is. I found it. So here's the if you get 10 new patients a month. So what the dentist says is, you go into a small town and it's got 5,000 people, and he practices there from age 25 to 65. And you come up to a 65-year-old man, you say, well, what do you need the most? He says, well, what I really need is new patients. What the hell? There's only 5,000 people in this town. You've been here for 40 years. So think about this. If a hygienist works 40 hours a week, if she works 40 hours a week, 50 weeks a year, she works 2,000 hours. So she could only clean 1,000 people's teeth twice a year. So if you give her if you get 10 new patients a month, every 8 years you'd add another hygienist. 20 new patients a month. Every 4 years, you add another hygienist. 30 new patients. Every 2.5 years, you add a hygienist. So and I don't want to say this because maybe it's your dad. Maybe your dad's a dentist, and he's gotten 30 new patients a month for 40 years. Well, he should have added a hygienist every 2.5 years. But he still only has that one hygienist. They never realize that new patients are, take a coffee cup and take a whole pot of coffee and just keep pouring it into the cup. And it's got to run over. Well, if you get 20 new patients a month and you're not adding a hygienist every 4 years, that means every time you put 20 new patients on the schedule, 20 old ones come off. And in the big towns, you can get addicted to crack cocaine advertising, because with Phoenix with 3.8 million people, I can always find 20 new suckers a month to throw on my schedule to replace the 20 that didn't come back. But when you're in a small town, and some of the greatest companies were all made in small towns. Walmart comes to mind. Sam Walton was in Beeville, Arkansas, or Bentonville, Arkansas, and a lady bought some shoes, the heel fell off, and she took it back to Walmart, and Sam said, well, it's not my problem. I didn't make them. I just sold them to you. Well, Sunday at church, the lady told Helen that they'd never go back. And Helen came home and told Sam, why aren't you taking them back? I mean, this town only has 5,000 people, and that family of 5's not coming back. So if we do that every week, eventually we're going to go bankrupt. So Sam immediately said, well, it's not my fault. And she goes, well, it actually is your fault. So what he did, it forced him to pioneer the no questions refund. And then the next time that man came to sell me 10 new pairs of shoes, he's like, I'm pushing this one up the value chain. You sold me this pair of shoes, the heel broke off, the lady brought it back, and you're going to give me another. So he pushed quality up the value chain, and everybody realized, hey, if Sam Walton buys 100 of these things and 50 of them don't work, you're going to have to replace those 50 or he's never doing business with you again. So he pushed out the value chain. So the question in dentistry is, when you're in a small town and you lose a family of 5, you know who that family is, and you stop doing that. But when you're in Phoenix, Arizona, or LA, or New York City, my God, you could piss off 50 people a day for 100 years and say, well, I still got all of North Miami to go. But so the bottom line is, my question is this: why do you need new patients? It's because your old patients didn't come back. Then I say, okay, well, let me see your no data. You don't even track your no data. Also, there's tell me every time you said no this month. Like they'll say to me, how?
Oh, what do you mean by no data?
No data. And no means they call you up. Are you open Saturday? No. Are you open evening? No. Do you do Invisalign? No. Do you take Blue Cross? No. So you say no like 80 times, and then you come to me and say, well, Howard, what do you think the best advertising is? Should I download Snapchat or TikTok? I'm gonna Snapchat, TikTok my way to success. No, you're not. You say no 40 times a week. And then you think you're going to solve your problem with a Facebook meme, okay? That, whatever. I mean, my deal is, someone calls you up and say, here's $1. Will you do this? And you say no. No, I'm not open evenings and weekends. No, I don't take your insurance. No, I don't do Invisalign. No, I'm not going to give you your money back. We warranty everything 5 years. Why? Because that's the norm. I'm in a tribe, and my tribe is America. Well, in America, I mean, think about it. If the average person lives to be 80, and so, easy math, 4 years. If everything only lasts 5 years, well, that means you're going to have to do it 25 times. So you did a filling, and it fell out in a year. I mean, what's your theory on fillings? That if someone lives to be 80, they should just get a new filling in that tooth every year for 80 years? I mean, really, if something can't last 5 years, I don't think you know how to diagnose streamline. You'll see it with young dentists. Like, they'll snap the tooth off of the gum line. And the dentist say, well, I once saw Superman jump into a phone booth, come out in a cape, flew away and solved the problem. And they'll do like a root canal and a post buildup and a crown, this total junk herodonics. And a year later, the lady walks in and says, yeah, I bit down in a Twinkie and it fell off. And you're like, well, I did everything I could. No, you didn't. It didn't last 5 years. So what we would do is we would warranty that root canal, billet, and crown towards the extraction and the 3-unit bridge or an implant and a crown. And by the way, don't even tell me about your thoughts on implants because they're totally emotional. So when we file down virgin teeth for a bridge, virgin teeth, are there teeth that aren't virgin? I've never looked in someone's mouth and said, do you know your molar and your bicuspid are having sex right now? How did you get virgin teeth? And then when you're a dentist, if I file down the enamel, you lose your mind. But then when you do a sinus lift, you'll blow out the sinus, fill it with dead cow bone, paper clips, BMP. You have no problem doing a nuclear war on a sinus because you're not an ENT. Then when I talk to my friends that are ENTs, they say, what the hell are you guys doing with those sinus lifts? You had 2 totally virgin teeth. Even they call them virgin teeth. You had 2 virgin teeth, and you just blew a hole in the sinus, and I'm up there, and there's white candidiasis, yeast infection. The hell were you in the sinus for? Well, I'm a dentist, and I worship at the altar of odontoblast, and I don't care about the evil empire sinus. I've just saved enamelblast and odontoblast. It's nuts. But the bottom line is, if it's a pretty girl and they're missing number 8, oh, a 3-unit bridge, I can nail it. I do a single unit implant and a crown, and she's got a black triangle, or she sees a little, oh my God, she's crazy. And I'll say, well, why didn't you just do a 3-unit bridge? Well, I didn't want to file down a virgin teeth. Well, you drilled a hole 18 millimeters into her maxilla. Why is her maxilla not sacred and the incisors are virgin gods or something like that? So the bottom line is what's making your patients happy? And when they're not happy, it's your job to make them happy. I paid for this and it lasted a year. I want you to fix it for free. Yeah, I agree. That's what they do at Walmart. Or your staff, they'll say, well, I can't work Saturdays or Sundays. That's totally fine. But please tell me that Saturdays and Sundays you're not going to grocery stores, restaurants, Costco's, that you're home praying all Saturday and Sunday. You totally believe that the whole weekend's a family, and don't say that everybody in town has got to be open for you on evenings and weekends, but you can't be open evenings and weekends. So, treat other people like you want to be treated. And so the bottom line is, and then when they don't come back, do you even have the guts to call them up and say, hey, Shirley, you never came back. You don't even want to hear why she didn't come back. Well, I'll tell you why I didn't come back, you idiot. You said I wouldn't feel the shot, and I felt electric bomb go off. You said the tooth would match. Yeah, it matches if you're blind and not wearing glasses. I don't like this. I want to know that. And then I would say to him, well, Sally, come back. Come on. I'm sorry. Come back. We got to make this better. I need you to come in and tell my hygienist what you told me. I'm going to redo it free because I don't want a lady living 1 mile from my office in Ahwatukee from age 25 to 65 who just hates my office and tells everybody she can about how bad it is. And look at the difference on this. I'll give you the final straw on this. This one, everyone thinks I'm nuts. And by the way, at least I know I'm nuts, okay? So when you hear someone say, well, I think Howard's nuts. Howard told me he was nuts, okay? But look at this. This is what my friends do. You didn't pay the bill. So what do? They turn you over to a collection agency. Well, did you talk to the guy? Did you know his wife just lost his job? The kids got cancer. The dog was ran over by a car. Do you know anything about it? You know what I do? 2 weeks before Christmas, I go get a stack of business cards, and I take all my over 90 they're never going to pay. I could turn them over to collections, and then they would hate me, and then maybe they would sue me, or they would make my life miserable, or beat my grandkids up at school, or whatever. I just said to them, I say, you know what? We had a great year. In fact, our year was so great. I'm so lucky. And obviously, you didn't have a great year because you haven't paid me any of your bill for 6 months. I don't know what's going on, but I'm sure if you had the money, you would have paid. So with the spirit of Christmas around the corner, I've adjusted off your balance. You don't owe me a dime. All I ask is that if you or your friends or loved ones ever need a dentist, that you keep referring them to Today's Dental. They come in, they're crying, they made me cookies, a cake, they're doing all that stuff. Then they tell you everything that went wrong with your life. And the 1 year they were down, the 1 year they couldn't pay their bill, you didn't turn them over to a collection agency. You said, hey, this is going to happen. 1%. Sam Walton said, look, man, 1% of everything we sell at Walmart gets returned. And when you return it, you said, well, there's a hole in my sleeping bag. And they're like, yeah, there's also dirt all over it, mud, there's grass. Are you sure you didn't take this out camping and hiking and got drunk and walked, but they're not even going to ask. Or they just assume that most people, whatever. You're innocent till proven guilty, but it's all the people business. You're in the people business, and you have the hard people business. You know why? Because when I buy an iPhone, I know what this is. When I go buy Diet Coke, I know what it is. I know everything I buy. But when I take my car to Grulich, I grew up with 5 sisters. I played Barbie dolls till I was 12. I've never changed a spark plug. I don't know what a lifter is. I don't know what a tranny is or a transmission or any of this stuff like that. And I take it to him, and when he says, well, it's not your battery, it's your alternator. Well, I wanted it to be the $100 battery, not the $1,000 alternator, but I go to one guy because I trust him. When I check into a hotel, I never saw them clean the bathroom, but the maid puts a little paper slip around the toilet seat. She's selling the invisible. Everything you do is invisible. And then when I go see the glass in the bathroom, it's got the little cardboard cup around the top of the thing because the maid's selling the invisible. This is a clean glass. When I order room service, I'm a health food fanatic, total health food fanatic. So every night before I go to bed, I always like to have a double vodka with a splash of something healthy like cranberry sauce or juice or something, the vitamin C thing. And and then when they order the drink, and when the drink comes to the room, they always leave a little half-inch of straw in there. What does that have to sell the invisible? Well, when you tell me that I have 4 cavities and they're each $250, that's $1,000. And I'm looking around like, well, how do I know that my transmission just doesn't need a quart of oil? How do I know this is true? Well, that dental assistant's been with you for 30 years. Everybody here's been with you a long time. When they sit there and say, Dr. Friend, is he good with kids? Well, that's the only place I take my kid. Is he good? My mom's got Alzheimer's. Well, he even works with a hygienist, and she's worse off than your mom. I mean, they feel trust because you're selling the invisible. I don't need a relationship with you to buy an iPhone. That's why Amazon, everything they sell, there's no trust involved. You know what it is. It's a whatever, and they ship it to your house. You got it. But when it's a doctor, you're selling the invisible. I have to trust you. And I'm in your facility. And a lot of the young dentists, they think, well, me, I need to wear a bone through my nose and a paper clip and a tattoo, and it's just the way I express myself. Okay, that's fine, but in my tribe in Phoenix, Arizona, walk in the room with a paper clip through your eyebrow and a bone through your nose and tell someone they got 4 cavities, they're all going to get a second opinion. If you tell them they got 4 cavities and every time they come in you have a different dental assistant, if every year they come in, they call up your office, oh yeah, I'd like to get my teeth cleaned with my favorite hygienist, Julie. Yeah, she don't work here no more. Yeah, we fired her, man. That girl was a total sleazeball. You're like, whoa, where did she go? Oh, now she's working across the street. You know how many times your hygienist quits and goes across the street and 100 people follow her over there? So why do you have the staff turnover? What is going on? It's called an image. I mean, when they walk in there and you tell me something invisible, Howard, you have 4 cavities and you need to give me $1,000 and you need to have me fix it. You got to have a whole lot of trust going in there. And that's also why, like, when you buy a dental practice, the owner carries. Because if you finance it through Bank of America and they give them $750,000 and run, everybody's kind of like, what's that? But if that dentist is carrying the money and he lives in that town and he's at Safeway and someone says, are you sure that I just went in there? That guy looks like he's like 13 years old. Are you sure he can do a root canal? He's like, dude, he's the best root canal guy in town. He could do one on me. And in fact, he did a root canal on me and my wife at the same time. And they're like, oh, so you're selling the invisible. So remember that. That's why, when your 8 o'clock root canal sees you at midnight walking out of the bar, stumbling, they're not going to show up the next day. That's why you drink at home alone in your underwear with all the shades down and the lights turned out. At least that's what Dinesh told me. That was what he recommended.
That's some pretty good advice right there. Thank you for that.
I did have a last question for you. I just had to remember it. I like to shadow dentists to try and work on the networking situation for when I get out. What are some key questions that you as a dentist would like to hear or bring up from a student or a new graduate?
I wouldn't even make it that structure. I would walk in there and just running for mayor. Hey, I'm a dentist. I've heard great things about your office. I just want to check it out. Do you have any advice for young kids? Talk to the staff. It's just networking. Some people you're not going to have chemistry. Maybe you like country music and you're a bowler. And you walk into a dentist and he likes, Third Eye Blind and hunting quail. You'll find people that have chemistry with you. You'll make friends and get them from dentists, hygienists, assistants, receptionists, but the vendors are the best because the vendors usually call on like 25 to 50 offices. So you walk into one office, if she's been working at Benco for 30 years, she already knows all the answers. So it's just a matter of volume. I would just get in the mood of just learning how to network. Just, again, you're running for mayor of Dental Town. And not Dental Town, the website. You're the town that you're a dentist in. And once you get out there and start running for mayor, February is Dental Health Month. So we go into all the schools, going and meet all the pharmacists, asking them, how often does someone come by and ask you a dental question? Is it for a sleep aid? Is it grinding their teeth? Is it pain? Is it Ambisol? And then when the guy says someone does that every day, well, that's when you invite him to your house for dinner. That's when you go meet him at a restaurant. I mean, the richest people in the world, poor people, they're like, I had a rough day. I'm going to go out for dinner. Millionaires like, I had a rough day. I want to go out for dinner. Who would be the smartest person to go out for dinner with? Oh, my banker, my lawyer, my candlestick maker. So the network of people like, well, I fully am going to go to Macayos tonight and eat a bunch of calories I don't need with frozen margaritas. But if you're going to do that, instead of paying $50 at Macayos, why don't you go with your pharmacist? And the MDs have really big egos, and they're actually far weirder than dentists. Whatever weirdness you think dentists have, you can times a solid 2.5 for the MDs. But the podiatrist, the chiropractors, the naturopaths, like say you're a dentist and you don't even like amalgam. Well, then why aren't you going out with all the naturopaths? Because the naturopaths all think that if you have amalgam, you're going to die. So why aren't you networking with all the people that provide healthcare? Again, in my house, I've had 100% of the chiropractors in there, 100% of the naturopaths, 100% of the. I even had the pelvic lady where, after you had a couple of kids, your pelvic falls out. I don't know. I've never had a pelvis. I've never had pelvis collapse, all this thing and that. But I sure as hell had dinner with her. I learned more about all the things that will never go wrong with my lack of having a pelvis. But she's a healthcare provider in my city. I mean, why would you practice across the street from a healthcare provider for 40 years and never get out there and press the flesh and run for mayor and go to lunch? And the specialists that do it. So there's two types of orthodontist. You go into ortho because you're the greatest orthodontist. Well, I've seen some of the greatest orthodontists have a very minimal practice. Then I've seen some okay average orthodontists that are perfect with the patients, the staff, the referrals. They're fun. They're adorable. Everybody loves them. And they make millions of dollars. So at the end of the day, we're all in the people business. But you're in the people business selling the invisible. And that's a scary place to be if you don't understand people. I would rather you be a salesman that just goes around selling Diet Coke than going around selling something they can't see. Look at it in also logic. Why does everybody hate math? Because you can absolutely show them they don't know what they're talking about and they're wrong. You can show them that in math and physics and sports. Like everybody on this podcast at one time in their life saw Dr. J dunk a basketball, or you guys, it's probably Michael Jordan, and you said, oh, I'm going to do that. And you dribbled down and you went to go dunk the ball, and indeed, it turns out that you could not dunk the ball. And then you saw Tiger Woods hit it down the middle, and you went out to golf clubs. When I do sports, I can absolutely see that I'm a 5'7" old Irish guy, and it doesn't work. So what do? They switch to things they can't see. Philosophy, politics, religion, philosophy, all the things where no one can say, well, absolutely, that is wrong. So that's where you are. You're selling the invisible. Man, they're looking at you and saying, really? Do I have 4 cavities, or do you just want $1,000? Am I your next Chanel No. 5 purse, or do I really have 4 cavities? And so what's the era of trust? Not having a bunch of staff turnover, showing them on the x-ray, getting out the intraoral camera, giving your staff the freedom. Like my hygienist, I told him, I said, well, you're not going to 4 years of college and not diagnosing a treatment plan. And they say, well, Dr. Fran, it's illegal for a hygienist to diagnose a treatment plan. I said, great. Then Florence has 7 prisons. Go down there and tell me how many hygienists are in prison today from reading an x-ray. Oh, in fact, you can't find a hygienist in prison for reading an x-ray. So that's not your excuse. If I go in there, I go into offices and the hygienist say, doctor, you might want to check. There's a little something going on in the upper right. I'm like, a little something? I don't even remember that term in morphology. I pick up the mirror, and it's a blown out number 3. Okay, did you get a PA and a bite wing? Did you tell her that this is only going to be saved with a root canal, billet, and crown? And if she doesn't have the money to extract it, you could go back later and place an implant, partial to... No, I'm not a doctor, so I just left that all for you. Well, what the hell? You were in here for an hour. And then you're an hourly person. You get $40 an hour. So no one thinks you're an incentivized salesperson. No one thinks you're on commission, and you're not. And they could have asked you 20 questions for an hour. And then I come in there and you did nothing, and all I do is, oh yeah, number 3 there needs a root canal, belt and crown, it's $2,500. Schedule is surely on the way out. Well, I know that 2 out of 3 times that's not going to happen. That's not how sales happens. It's about showing them and entrusting. And then when my hygienist says number 3, I'm seeing a distal flossing cavity on the backside of the tooth. I'm not going to call it an MO and a DO. What does the M stand for on MOD?
Money.
Money, mesial. And how old were you the first time your mom used the word mesial? How many times did you say to your mom, Mom, I can't find my shoes? Well, they're in the mesial distal side of your closet. If you'd climb over the occlusal surface and go in your closet, right there on the mesial side, if your mama didn't use the word, lose it. You have a cavity there because you don't floss. You have a flossing cavity in the backside of the teeth. You show them on the x-ray. But when I get in there and the hygienist says, I think there's a flossing cavity on the backside of tooth number 3. And I look at the x-ray and say, I don't think so. I think it's a watch. Okay, no one say a word. And then we get on so I tell you, we need a third opinion in room 3. And another hygienist, dentist is going to walk in there and we say, no one say a thing. Number 3. And they look at number 3 and they go, I say it's a watch on the backside of the tooth. Then it's 2 to 3. Well, now the patient's like, oh my God, this place, it comes down to a democracy. It's totally transparent. It's totally trusting. And then about 80% of the dental offices, the dentist wouldn't even, if you read an x-ray, they would reprimand you. They would fire you. They don't even want hygienists to have independent licensure, and they say they're an American conservative. So your hygienist goes to school for 4 years, and you don't think she should have the constitutional right to open up her own hygiene practice? Yeah, and tell me how you're not a communist. Tell me how you're not a totalitarian. Tell me how you're not the Kim Jong-un of dentistry. You literally can look me in the eyes and tell me that your hygienist doesn't have the right to own her own business. I wish I could be a dictator and throw you in jail just for thinking that. But that's what 80% of the dentists think. 80% of dentists don't want hygienists to own their own practice. They don't want dental assistants reading their own x-rays. They don't want any of this stuff. They always blame laws and jail and all that stuff. But the deal is they just don't want to deal with the issue. And the issue is, how are you going to tell a patient they need 4 cavities and they trust you and they believe you? And once you can get the patients to trust you, they stay with you. And then 20 years later, you're not always trying to do an Instagram ad to get a new patient. You get customers for life. And that's what you should focus on, customers for life. And when you have a business and people are calling you up and saying, I will give you money if you do this, and you say no, and you don't even hear the conversation. You don't even record the phone calls. I can't call a single Fortune 500 company in America that doesn't start off with, this call may be recorded for training purposes. You don't even train your calls. So why do you think your receptionist, when a patient calls and they're talking to their mom about bowling on Thursday night, it goes over to the customer and says, can you please hold? And then goes back to their mom for 10 minutes because you're not even recording the phone call. Just play at an elite level and you'll win at an elite level.
That was awesome advice.
I like it.
All right, guys. And anytime you want to do it again, let me know.
It'd be awesome. It was really a privilege to have you. We're all very
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Fran. We really appreciate it.
Thank you.
Oh, thank you. And you tell Nick Goodwani that thank you for pulling out the bottom half of at least the first 20 molars I tried to pull at Sunshine Dental. Tell him I still owe him a beer for that.
Sounds good. I will let him know next time I see him.